ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.
Good evening, everybody. Today is Thursday, December 19th, 2024. It is 6:30 p.m. on the nose. We are the Arlington School Committee. We have a full house here today of school committee members, so we don't have to worry about remote voting, so we'll just conduct business as usual. We begin with public comment. Members of the public who wish to address the committee, there will be a 30-minute period of public comment. If you'd like to sign up to speak, either remotely via Zoom or in person, you must email ediggins by 6 p.m. On the Thursday of the day of the meeting. Depending on how many people sign up, the allotments may be reduced, but we don't have that issue tonight. So we will go down the list, and remember that the time limit is strictly enforced at 3 minutes. Patricia Vasilev-Misuro will be first.
Hello. So 18 Cleveland Street. I think everyone knows my family. We did listen yesterday to the, can you hear me?
Yeah.
The committee, the presentation of the curriculum. I think the summary is, I want to say that we really as parents don't feel the administration is working with us. It's kind of they go off, do something, come back. But I was under the impression that the superintendent, I mean, they're there to serve our children. And there was nothing in that presentation that's going to help my son, my kids to really be able to be in the program that suits their needs. So it's just, Arlington doesn't have anything for accelerated learners or just kids who are maybe a little bit more quick to learn particular areas. There is the program by DESE, and I also heard Dr. Holman talk about it, that I don't know who they is, but they opted not to be part of it. I don't know how these decisions are made, especially in lieu of what we are presenting, and the fact that the kids are demotivated and struggling in the classrooms to stay awake. That's for my younger child, who I ended up putting in a small private school. My son is still at Gibbs today, and he's not thriving. He's not being tailored. He's bored in math. He's asking why they are not listening. So we did hear that the bypass is going to be removed, but I mean, I think the bypass, it's not about the test. It's about being able to teach at a pace that's suitable for the child. He's not being taught at a pace that should be expanded. I mean, the kids are asking for it. I don't know, like, if the superintendent is not there to serve the kids, this isn't about the career for them. You are there to serve our kids. Our kids hired you to do it. So so this is like my first view. I did appreciate the multiple options, and thank you so much for the committee for asking for that, and that's great. But what about the kids now? I mean, we are being slow walking these kids. They're asking to be challenged. So that's kind of our first. We would appreciate for Dr. Holman and Dr. Ford Walker to work with us and not just kind of present it. We only learn about it by looking at the website. It's not like they're talking to us. They are not. And, we did put forward, I'm going to send an email about it. I did look at the options. There's a number of them, like 6A hybrid, I believe, or like heterogeneous. I mean, if you have, I don't know how many in the committee have listened to or read the Boston Globe article, what's happening in Newton now, how every single teacher except one has signed a petition to remove the heterogeneous class because it's not benefiting the slow learners. It's certainly not benefiting. They literally are crying and saying, please stop that. This isn't helping the students. They rolled it out without looking at it. And now it's being proposed in Arlington as an option. I think we should look at that before we go ahead and jump into it. So I don't get to finish, but thank you so much.
Next is Dennis Grodkowski.
Hi, I'm remote. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, so Dennis Grodkowski, 57 Wollaston Avenue. my video on here. It's been thinking some thoughts since I've been engaging this process. Thank you very much. It sounds to me like it's easier to hold kids back than it is to like advance them forward, and that seems frustrating as a parent of kids who want to be learning. I feel our kids feel like they're being held back, and it's interesting to hear that last time I thought it was interesting to hear about family that was pushed forward or kind of like advanced forward, but they had to leave and come back to leave the school district, come back, and be reevaluated, almost recalibrated. Seems so exceptional, but it was interesting to hear. But it seems like it's almost impossible to advance the kids forward like we're talking about. But I think that with the group of parents we're talking with here, we hope to change that. I understand that there's a class, at least for my 6th grader, class called What I Need When. What I need when. What my son needs are math classes that engage them. That would be the win that we're looking for. I think the what I need period. Maybe there's like an opportunity in that period to gather these kids or identify these students who feel kind of less engaged, and put them on the path that helps them kind of like not bypassing, but using that what I need to put them in the place where they need to be. That's what I need as a parent. I was thinking back to like 2 meetings ago, I think, where Miss Browner was talking about how she was unaware of the relationship of the math pathways to the AP Physics C class. I just thought that was shocking. I would expect that she has I would expect that she knows like every class that has like a math term in it, whether it's in the math department or the science department. That was really disappointing to hear. I'm an architect. I think about the new high school building a bit. I design school buildings professionally. I think the idea of high-performance buildings and high-performance schools. I also like to think about high-performance students. What I'm realizing is that it doesn't matter how we design the school if the curriculum doesn't engage the students properly at every level. I realize that no amount of daylight, fresh air, views to nature, etc., will make my 2 sons' math classes more interesting for them and exposing them to the material that they're seeking. They have fun they may have fun in the classes that they're in because they're so easy for them, and that doesn't make me feel good to hear. To me, the new building sometimes feels like an expensive computer with an inadequate operating system, but I think that can be fixed. I want to repeat that I feel like the summer school solutions, they seem like false solutions to me, and they almost seem like punishments for kids who are trying to press forward. It can get in the way of schedules for jobs, other kind of development of their whole selves. So I really hope that we can avoid that, knowing that these kids who want to engage these classes will do what they need to do to get to the experiences that they're looking for. So if that is the option, we'll take it and we appreciate that, but it doesn't seem like the best solution. I just hope that we please support and encourage the kids to advance, and please avoid discouraging.
Thank you, sir. Your time has expired.
Okay, I didn't hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Cheryl Miller, who I believe is also online. We can bring Cheryl up.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Miller. I live at 10 Thesda Street. I'm the parent of 2 kids with disabilities in Arlington, one of whom is a chronically absent student. I would like to raise my deep concerns about the approach Arlington is taking toward chronic absenteeism, particularly for students with disabilities who are overrepresented in the statistics of students who struggle to attend school. Dr. Homan claims that Arlington wants to support families, but all that falls apart as soon as a child is in special education. When Arlington Special Education does not want to provide the support a student needs to be able to attend, all Arlington has to say is, we disagree, without any evidence. And then it's fine with Dr. Homan to leave a child sitting at home alone for months because it is technically legal. This is precisely what happened to my child. Dr. Homan claims that Arlington wants to collaborate with families. My experience has been precisely the opposite. My child was blamed and shamed. I was blamed and shamed. My input was ignored over and over. My child's difficulties were put down to anxiety. First, by staff who had failed to recognize her autism, and later as an excuse to avoid meeting her need for a higher level of support. There is no collaboration at all. Labeling a child's difficulty attending school as anxiety is a get-out-of-jail-free card Arlington uses to avoid understanding the full extent of the child's needs. If a student of color is anxious about coming to an environment where they are regularly exposed to racism, is Arlington's approach to keep exposing them to racism repeatedly so that eventually their anxiety will go away? If a trans student is anxious about being in a place where they are repeatedly experiencing transphobia, is Arlington's approach to expose them to transphobia over and over again so that their anxiety will go away. I don't know what Arlington does for those groups because I have the privilege of not having to experience it. However, I am a disabled adult and the parent of 2 disabled children. And I can say that for my child who struggles with school, a place where teachers taught her every day that who she is wrong, the Arlington Public Schools approach was absolutely to keep exposing her to that ableism over and over again in the hope that somehow, magically, her anxiety would go away. Except it didn't go away, it went inside. It became deeply ingrained shame over who she is. It did harm that may never be repaired. And Dr. Homan has made very clear that she is perfectly happy with what happened to my child because it is technically legal. That is her standard for students with disabilities. Not equity, not justice, or any of the values of the strategic plan. Just technically legal.
And that concludes public comment. Next up would be the student representatives. Welcome.
Thank you.
Your time is not expired. So what's happening at Arlington High School? I hear that there's some sort of a celebration involving a hockey coach?
Oh yeah. Actually, I do know about this because I saw it on Instagram. But he led. I believe it was his 400th victory in hockey, which is very impressive. But
our sports are like 2 to 3 weeks in. It seems like a lot of wins all around. Hockey, track, swim, basketball. We're all doing pretty well.
And then also this week was a Spirit Week, so that meant that every day there was a certain, dress code. So it was nice to see everyone participate. And we also, the student council passed out hot chocolate on one of the days to take off a little bit of stress with all the finals that are and tests that are before winter break. And then also today there was a fire drill, which was notable because some people were, it was a little chaotic because it was during, it's there was a ton of tests today, so.
And then we had wellness workshops, our last of 3. Just a little reminder what they are. They promote mental health among students. So I went to a performance by, it was a joint performance by the band, chorus, and orchestra today. I thought it was really cool just to see them share their talent of music.
Okay. As usual, you have full participatory rights in the meeting tonight, and you also earn a gluten-free cranberry cupcake for your troubles. Wow. So we'll pass them down. For those who are watching on TV, my wife likes to bake, and we had our kitchen out of commission for about 6 weeks for renovation, and we're back in business. So we're sort of celebrating with some school committee cupcakes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, field trip discussion and possible approval. Superintendent.
Okay, I believe that we have Ms. Tonishall here to talk about a field trip that we do frequently. It's a Model Congress conference that we've sent students to several times, and I will let her take it away and explain the field trip and answer any questions that you all have before we do approval by the school committee because it's an overnight trip. Go ahead.
Hi everyone, good evening. I'm Erica Tonishall. I am a history teacher at the high school and one of the co-advisors for the Model Congress Club at Arlington High School. Leo is a member of that as well. And last year, at the end of the academic year, we had some students present to the school committee their experience on that field trip. And we are fortunate to have a mentorship collaborative relationship with Harvard Model Congress. So we have undergraduate students who assist our high schoolers in getting prepared for their briefings, And this trip takes place from the Thursday of February break to the Sunday of February break. It's overnight. It's in Boston, so it's local, but it is overnight at a hotel in the Prudential Center. And we're fortunate to have full funding for this from the Harvard Model Congress mentorship program. They cover everything from the conference fees to the hotel rooms to student stipends for food and clothing as well for students who are in need of business casual.
Excellent. Superintendent, you're looking for approval for the Model Congress trip. So I will look for a motion for that. Moved by Mr. Thielman,
Second?
second by Ms. Exton. Any comments, discussions, or questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Morgan.
So we're approving this because it's an overnight trip, is that why? Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I trust that the Model Congress will be more, have greater decorum than the actual one, and they won't be overthrowing the speaker, right?
That's my understanding, but I think we have more input on that as a member of the Model Congress himself.
I just want to make sure we're not contributing to the ills of the nation. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Morgan?
Unfortunate, sorry guys, but, so I can't, the Google form thing, the copy of is blank.
Yeah, it's not popping up. for me.
So, it just, well, maybe it's scrolled, it's all of, the form is there, but it's just, there's no words in it.
It's just the signature. Are you talking about the international trip application form?
International travel application. I'm gonna like put aside the fact that it's called
I
international.
already had the thought.
But like moving on from that, but it just isn't filled out.
That might be an issue with the way that when I sent over the documents, possibly. I'm happy to share the form with you all as collaborators or share it as a PDF. Sorry about that.
So it needs the signature of department head, principal, superintendent. Is that what you're looking for?
And there's other, no, they got signatures.
No,
but
that one's there, the
there's
last
a
document.
form without text.
The copy of
Oh.
2025, because this we usually get, right, which gives us like,
All the information.
yeah.
Right, right, right.
So I
Yeah.
guess what I would, you all have approved this trip in the past. Is it okay if I talk?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I guess my suggestion would be one of two things. Either we can table it and vote at the first meeting in January, and we can go find all of the relevant information, or you all can approve this pending review and signature by me, and I can make sure that we have all of the information and forward it to you once it's fully approved. I'd be fine with either approach. Unless there's some block for you, Ms. Tonishall, around needing the approval before early January.
No, early January would work, and I apologize for the technological difficulty that's happening with that.
Okay, I'm now looking at my committee for a sense of where they'd like to go. Mr. Thielman?
I'm perfectly comfortable moving this with the expectation the superintendent will ensure the form is correct.
Okay, so the motion by Mr. Thielman is amended to include the language that pending review of the form by the superintendent and distribution to the school committee. Dr. Allison Ampe.
Is this trip significantly different than the trip that you took last year?
It's the exact same trip, same even dates, itinerary, everything, so.
Okay. Given that, I feel comfortable voting for it, given approval by the superintendent. And actually, I think in the future, this could be put under the consent agenda because it's not new, and even though it's over, yes, we have to approve it because it's overnight, but we don't have to discuss it. So.
Our esteemed vice chair will take that into advisement when she reaches this next year at this time. Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve pending signature by the superintendent, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
I'm gonna abstain.
And an abstention.
Yep.
So that's going to be a 6-0-1 vote. The trip is approved. Do we have anything else under the field trips here? That's just it. It's the Harvard trip. Now we've got community outreach, and there's a dog involved, which brings me tremendous joy. So, Chief Flaherty, welcome.
Hello.
Oh my
Good
God,
evening,
everyone.
This is Roger.
Good evening. I'm Chief Flaherty, and this is School Resource Officer Brian White, and we're thrilled to be here to introduce our newest officer, Officer Roger. Officer White will be Roger's handler. He's 11 weeks old, and he is our community engagement dog. So this is a program that I've been hoping to bring to the community for the past 5 years, and because of different things that have happened, we haven't been able to. This past year, we were able to partner with the Arlington Rotary Club, who has been very gracious and generous, and they were able to get a grant to support the program, the cost of the dog as well as the cost of the training. So we will be happy to answer any questions about the program. I think Officer White would just like to say a few words
Sure.
about how the dog will be used in the schools.
So he's not fully out in the schools yet, because as you can see, he's still doing his puppy biting thing. So it's all play, but we don't want the elementary kids to get scared, or, catch a stray, nip. But he's just playing. He's anything but vicious. But he starts his new training, puppy training, right after the calendar, the new year, and so he does 6 weeks of puppy basic training, and then for the month of March, he goes away for like a sleepaway camp to start his like therapy dog comfort training, and then we continue training for the year, and then after a year he can I become a certified therapy dog handler and he becomes a certified therapy dog. So it's extensive training. I have introduced him to many of the students at the Audison and the high school. I haven't taken him to the Gibbs yet, but he's been a huge hit. He in a big crowd he doesn't do this this nibble in here. He just takes all the pets he can get. But he's bringing, like, I've met a lot of new kids, just maybe kids that have been hesitant to speak to me in the past. He's definitely been a welcomed addition to the town and the school and the department.
Superintendent, do we need to do anything, or is this
You
just
don't need
a welcome?
approval or anything. We do have a process for approval of animals in the schools, and a process that we've shared that's procedural with our leaders, which we shared with them, and they've submitted all of the paperwork according to that procedure. But obviously, like, this is an extensive program that has a lot of vetting and training associated with it, and that other communities have also implemented across the state. We're really excited to be involved, and excited that Officer White will be the officer with the pup, and it fits very well, I think, with our SRO program and how it works as a support to the schools. So we're looking forward to it.
Go ahead, Ms. Gittleson.
Hi, I so want to come cuddle the dog. And I think it sounds like a fantastic program, and the training, I mean, I'm sure it is going to be executed really well. As the parent of a kid who still sometimes wants to cross the street when we see a dog coming, even one that cute and seemingly harmless, I'm just sort of wondering how, like, I trust you, and the idea that this brings some kids to you who would never, like, I think it's a great idea, but I'm a little concerned about the kids who have either rational or, like my child, fairly irrational fears of dogs, and how, like, when you do start bringing the dog into elementary schools, kind of what that will look like.
Yep. So we'll definitely feel out, like, staff and teachers about kids that might have a fear of animals or dogs. What I can tell you is, so we got him from the same breeder that the Belmont Comfort Dog is from and the Tewksbury Comfort Dog is from, and we're using the same exact training program. It's called Auntie Dog up at Tewksbury, and those dogs are, so they're now, the Tewksbury Dog's 3 years old, the Belmont Dog's 1 year old, and they're both off leash in the school. That's how extensive the training is, and they obey all the commands of the handler, and I've seen it work. But to answer your question, I will never bring him around any kids that do not want to be around him. He is hypoallergenic. He's got hair, not fur. But I will definitely, that's something to look into. Maybe I can even talk to you about, and maybe we can do a private meeting, meet him from a distance. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of hopeful that a program like this might actually help a kid like my kid, but I also like don't, it just makes me, you know, I don't want him, he doesn't talk about being afraid of dogs like to his teachers,
Sure.
so they don't necessarily
Sure.
know that, right? And they wouldn't be able to give you that heads up. So I just, as long as it's like in your mind as you plan things out,
That's definitely something we'll keep in consideration, and we're in the process of developing a policy that we should have done before the end of the year, and I'll share that with Dr. Holman, but communication will be key, and I
Yeah.
know that Officer White will be communicating with all of the principals and probably doing some type of a presentation at the schools prior to bringing the dogs in.
Great.
Superintendent.
So also to speak to sort of how we're doing this in other spaces where we do sometimes have therapy animals who either come into the building or are integrated into the school culture, the students are in the driver's seat of situations like that where they might be a little hesitant or worried, and we won't impose an animal on a space that a student is comfortable in if they're not comfortable with it. So keeping the animal in common areas is something that's fairly common, or in designated areas is common. Obviously, Officer White goes all around our schools, but with the animal with them, like, we'll have policies and procedures for how to deal with that, and we will definitely be talking with the principal team at length about what some of those protocols are, so that they can gather whatever information they might need to get from families or students in order to make sure that Officer White knows, when I go into this school, I need to just steer clear of these areas, or leave the dog in the car is an option, or not have the dog with me for this particular thing that I'm doing that day. So there are a lot, there's a lot of pieces of that, I believe, in some of the training that gets done, but also we have some protocols we've used in the schools for that, where we have had animals present, so we'll be following some of those same protocols.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Morgan.
So my question is like the reverse of Ms. Gittleson. So we do have some furry friends in our schools now, right? At various levels of training, right? Some of them are, they have not gone to 6 weeks of sleepaway camp,
Sure.
right? Promise. So like our friend Roger here, is a pretty like significant resource for the department, right? Like this is an investment that we're making in an animal that's going to have pretty specialized, like, I imagine they don't train them for free, right? So he's going to be an expensive dog at the end of his training, right? And an important resource for the department. So do you have any concerns? And maybe you won't. I guess what I would ask you is that 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the road, if you have concerns about other furry friends that we perhaps have in our schools and whether they pose any kind of risk or challenge to Roger being able to do his job in our buildings, that you would, reach out to the superintendent, connect with her. She's more than capable of, I just would like to hear back from you if that poses a problem, that we do have other, they're therapy dogs, but they're not like this, right? Yeah. So this just feels like a really important resource for the town, for the schools. It's something we really need to protect, and I want to make sure that Roger has environments within our buildings that he can do what he's being trained to do. So, and if you feel that that's not the case, I hope you will come back and.
Thank you. We appreciate.
You don't need to tell us, but like you can sort it out, and because it does seem really important, and we want to make sure that we're providing him with an environment where he can support our kids too.
Sure. If I can just add something. So today he met Annie, Dr. O'Brien's therapy dog at the Stratton. And I just had the sense that me bringing him into Dr. O'Brien's office might create some kind of territory, not a battle, but you know what I'm saying. So I suggested maybe bringing Annie outside where they can meet, where Annie wouldn't feel protective of her space and things like that. So I will check in with the schools to see if there would be any kind of issue.
Right, and I guess I would hope that this situation, this animal and partnership that's been invested in so significantly by the town really be prioritized as, this is what I would like to see, is exactly what you are all doing.
Sure.
So,
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, Roger will exit the room in this direction so we can pat him as he goes by. Okay?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, we will bring the Dallin School up for their school improvement plan. No, the Dallin School can come up. We're going to have you come first.
Come get set up.
You can come get set up while we pet the dog. I mean, really. This will set you up for the smoothest, calmest, happiest committee encounter you will ever experience.
I got my Roger pets this week, so.
Oh, you met Roger this morning?
Yep.
Oh, hey, sweetie.
I didn't realize he was back there until you, like, came. I was like,
He's pretty good.
The dog.
He's pretty good.
We're all good and buttered up for you, Mr. Dingman.
Isn't he wonderful?
So Sam didn't really need to come, because that's why I brought Ms. Carustis. I was thinking, she's my better half at school, and then I have another better half at home, which the math on that doesn't really leave me much, but.
And we've got a dog here.
And then Roger, so I'm sunk.
Calm and soothed school committee. What a love.
Thank you again. Thank you.
See you, Brian.
Thank you, Chief Flaherty. Feel free to bring Roger back anytime. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Dingman, it's all yours. Or actually, Superintendent, it's all yours. You can introduce Mr. Dingman.
I will hand it right back off to you. We have our last two school improvement plan presentations today, and Dallin and AHS will close us out. I'm driving, so let me know.
Okay, so I give you the.
Yep, giving the eye, and I'll change it over.
Yeah, why don't you just kind of open us up to our first slide on our intro. Good evening, everybody. I'm Thad Dingman. I'm the principal at Dallin Elementary. I'm not starting. I've started, and I'm in my 11th year as principal at Dallin. Here with me tonight is our wonderful assistant principal, Ms. Samantha Carustis. Wait, what year are you in? Is this 8? Wow. What a great partnership. So I'm here to talk about the work that we're doing at Dallin Elementary this year, our students, our teachers, and our families. You can keep going one more slide. And here's our school. This is Dallin Elementary, located in Arlington off of Florence Avenue. We serve 390 students with a staff of over 70, come together daily to create a learning environment grounded in our core values, respect, responsibility, and courage. These are the values that guide everything we do and are reflected in our emphasis on kindness within our community. Dallin, we're committed to educating the whole child. So this means fostering academic, social, and emotional success. We also hope to develop a love of learning and curiosity with our students. Each year, aligned with our district's strategic plan for belonging, we are continuing our efforts to create inclusive environment for our students. So some wins for us. Last year, our school improvement plan focused on growth in reading and writing and an emphasis on supporting students with IEPs. We worked hard to improve the systems of support that provide equitable access for these students, and we're encouraged by the progress that we're starting to see. Our commitment to frequent progress monitoring, flexible groupings, evidence-based practices is paying off. 3 times a year, we benchmark the progress of all of our students. Last year, 75 to 80% of our students showed that they're meeting early reading benchmarks, important indicators for future reading success. Our kindergartners and first grade students were particularly successful, with 90% meeting grade level expectations by year end. We're also proud of our year-over-year growth that we are seeing at Dallin. On our MCAS assessments, our students are demonstrating an average SGP of 55% or more, putting them on the high end of making yearly progress in ELA and mathematics. We're also equally committed to our students' social and emotional well-being. Our surveys consistently show that our students feel their teachers hold them to high standards while supporting and encouraging their success. This reflects our core values of courage and the belief in pushing through challenges. Last year, our fourth grade students piloted new student voice surveys that are now being rolled out district-wide. These surveys revealed encouraging results, with our students scoring in the 80th to 99th percentile nationally for self-perception. This highlights the impact of the warm and supportive environment that our staff is creating for the children in our community. Our staff, importantly, also reports feeling respected and valued. Their sense of belonging mirrors the culture we aim to build for our students, one of mutual respect and encouragement. And while we see success, our data highlights some key challenges. One of our primary focal groups are students with disabilities. We notice a persistent gap in math performance compared to peers. Multi-step problem solving and fractions in particular remain challenging. Similarly, our science outcomes show a downward trend across all groups. In response, we're implementing systems to proactively address these areas. In math, we've introduced pre-teaching strategies focused on fraction concepts with the support of our interventionist and mathematics coach. Teachers are also adjusting the scope and sequence of instruction to provide more preparation, particularly ahead of high-stakes testing moments. Additionally, collaborative work during our grade level team meetings has allowed us to review student data, refine instructional strategies, and create a more targeted, responsive approach. In science, our MCAS results show a decline in outcomes across all our student groups. While fifth grade results serve as the primary measure, it's clear these outcomes are influenced by instruction and experiences leading up to that grade. We're aware of that. To address this, currently we've transitioned to an integrated instructional model. It means keeping all core subjects within the homeroom setting. Previous years, Dallin students may see some level of departmentalization, moving between different teachers for science and social studies. We've ended that practice. This approach, combined with ELA education's curriculum inclusion of science standards, is representing our first steps towards addressing this challenge. EL is certainly not does not provide complete access to grade level standards, but certainly is providing more access to standards through core instruction, along with core instruction in science, and we recognize the need for ongoing discussions and continued adjustments to continue to improve these outcomes. One of our most persistent concerns lies in our students' sense of belonging. Despite numerous initiatives, including school-wide reads, Heritage Month celebrations, assemblies, other enrichment, and outreach with our community, with our community, our belonging data has remained static. This signals the need for deeper reflection and more meaningful strategies to foster that genuine sense of connection within our school community. In part, our response, our teachers are stepping up to lead the charge. 3 of our staff-led committees are specifically focused on belonging, addressing areas such as social emotional learning, curriculum enrichment and celebration, and opportunities to elevate student voice. So these are just some of our efforts demonstrating our commitment to ensuring every student feels seen, valued, and truly part of the Dallin experience. This year, we've set 4 strategic goals that represent our focuses as a school. First, the full implementation of the EL education curriculum is our top academic priority. This will strengthen foundational literacy skills, strengthen collaboration among staff, and provide opportunities for students to engage with new assessments and meaningful projects. Second, within this curriculum, we're focusing on our practice, looking at intentional academic discourse, growing intentional academic discourse, and visible learning through the use of learning targets. These strategies deepen student engagement and understanding. Third, we're elevating student voice in multiple ways. One key initiative is our partnership with Playworks, which emphasizes inclusion, social emotional skill building, and student leadership at recess. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And finally, we're committed to fostering a greater sense of belonging in our community. One important shift for us this year is the reintroduction of the METCO program at Dallin, and the support that we are offering for STEAM enrichment in partnership with our community, and aligns closely with their priorities and what they want for their children in our schools. So now I'm going to talk about just a few key initiatives with a little bit more detail. They're part of our school improvement plan. I'm going to start with the adoption of our EL education curriculum at Dallin. Implementing the EL education curriculum has been a significant undertaking. If we're the last one, you've probably heard about it a little bit. And it's already transforming learning at Dallin. This curriculum immerses students in 1 hour of uninterrupted, immerses all students in 1 hour of uninterrupted ELA instruction daily, giving them the opportunity to engage deeply with content. We're seeing beautiful student projects emerge. Fifth graders are writing with greater structure and depth on topics like human rights, while first graders are designing tools to improve their classrooms and make their schools a better place. You can see here some first graders who've developed a feelings chart to go with their classroom supply of Band-Aids and bandages when something on the inside feels hurt. And a book hospital to enhance their learning space and make sure that all their books are taken care of and cared for and brought back into their school libraries. Both these projects demonstrate the parts of a complete literacy experience, one that teaches and emphasizes speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills continuously. Is there no sound? That's okay. I wish there was. And if you get to see it, it is an absolutely beautiful moment in a first grade classroom of small groups of first grade students designing and collaborating on a project together, and to just hear them without any teacher interaction develop these projects and work together is magic. So we are lifting core practices as part of this implementation. So there is the content that's so important, but there's also the pedagogy. These successes are made possible by teaching practices that emphasize learning targets and academic discourse. Learning targets make the purpose of each lesson clear, connecting standards, grade level standards, to connecting mastery of grade level standards and habits of character. Teachers use these targets to guide discussions and help students reflect on their progress. Discourse opportunities are intentionally planned and coached throughout the day across all content areas.
I can send that video to them separately.
Yeah, you guys see it. It's great. It's really special. Our staff is deeply engaged in professional learning to support the EL education curriculum. We've partnered with EL education coaches, and they're working directly with our staff and administrators to unpack units and plan with intention. The best thing that we can do with our teachers is provide them good quality professional development and the time to unpack this curriculum carefully. Planfully, that's the word I want to use, planfully. Additionally, our instructional leadership team, which is composed of teachers, specialists, and coaches, are leading the way by sharing their insights and modeling best practices for their colleagues. Walkthroughs with district administrators are providing opportunities to monitor our progress and make adjustments. We're looking at that data collectively as in teams of teachers, setting goals for ourselves as we are as we closely monitor this full school implementation. Another initiative that I want to lift up is our PlayWorks Junior Coaches program. The PlayWorks Junior Coaches program is empowering fifth graders to lead recess activities, fostering inclusion and responsibility. In response to student voice data and because of the work of our social work team and securing a grant last year, we have brought the PlayWorks team in to work directly with our staff and our students. The junior coaches structure games, they act as referees, and they support their peers and create a positive recess culture. This initiative we see is already showing positive results. Students are taking pride in their leadership roles. Our fifth graders they show up to work on time. Like that's I think the first thing you look for if you love your job. The program reflects our commitment to growing a positive environment for play and including student voice in that process, along with thinking about their social emotional growth. The last initiative that I want to speak about is going to showcase two projects. They're examples of how we're using student voice to improve our system. Both involve something called empathy interviews, which you probably have heard throughout different or read in different school improvement plans. Empathy interviews provide genuine insight into the experiences of our students and our families. These are conversations that help us tailor our practices to reflect values that students and staff have and families, experiences, and ideally create a more inclusive and meaningful environment for our kiddos. The two examples that we are using, where we're using this approach, include inquiry cycles that are being conducted by our specialist team. That's our art, PE, music, library folk, and the redesign of our whole child team, which would also be called a student support team in some schools. These initiatives not only prioritize student input, but also use their insights to guide practical changes that enhance the learning environment and their well-being. I want to start with our specialist team, some work that they are doing with empathy interviews. So our specialist team have embraced this approach and are using these empathy interviews to design mini experiments that are looking to improve student engagement and learning. For example, in music, one student was empowered after an empathy interview, was empowered to lead her class by creating and teaching norms that she developed after an empathy interview with her teacher. This resulted in immediate improvements in her participation, demonstrating the power of centering student experience. And we have many of these small mini experiments that we have been conducting starting in the spring of 2024 and have continued on into the fall of 2024. Beyond the classroom, we're expanding this work to include families. So in partnership with our school council, families representing focal groups at Dallin will participate in empathy interviews in 2025. Their insights will help us identify opportunities to improve inclusion and engagement. When families and communities feel heard and valued, they're more likely to engage actively in their children's education and advocate for systemic improvements. This has been in partnership with the DEIJB department, who provided training for our parent and community member interviewees. And we're now in the process of actively recruiting families to participate. So in expanding this type of street data pedagogy, street data is the source of where empathy interviews and their and some of the content that we're studying is coming from. It democratizes decision-making, shifts power dynamics in school systems to a shared process with students and community. The second project I wanted to talk about is our whole child team reframe. This is another example of how we're elevating student voice. The whole child team is a reimagined student support team that integrates teacher leadership, student voice, and cross-disciplinary collaboration. By centering on empathy interviews and our problem solving around challenges of practice seen in some of the students and seen in student work and output, this team hopes to create a space for educators to address challenges collectively. This team is another example of how we're responding to the new committee pilot that's being offered in the new contract. So this is actually a committee led and being run by teacher leaders in our school. And a fun side note, this specific project, we give shout out to Rye Daly, who is an aspiring principal fellow in the inaugural Department of DESE program with the Lynch Leadership Academy. Rye's charge is to identify a change initiative that will disrupt an inequity in their school through collaboration with other adults in the building. So the committee pilot has offered a teacher leader like Rye the ability to not only disrupt inequity, to build system change, and to collaborate with other teachers in our building and using their expertise to improve our school. So we're immensely proud of our teachers and their commitment to creating inclusive classrooms that prioritize holistic student growth. So when we think into future years about how to continue to grow and where we believe we continue to need to support, district support to sustain this, we're requesting additional resources, including paraprofessionals, interventionists, and special education staff. These supports will help ensure students have a strong core learning experience. This happens by ensuring a high-quality, accessible, Tier 1 classroom program for all of our students, and we believe this takes a team. We just want to round this off by saying we're deeply grateful for our families, our PTO, and our community for their partnership and support. We continue to see volunteering grow at Dallin Elementary. We continue to see new opportunities arise from by listening to parents and inviting them into our school and our space. We want to just thank all of them for helping us create a school where we are seeing our students thrive.
Thank you. Members of the committee.
Questions?
Seeing no questions, thank you, Mr. Dingman. Superintendent.
Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead.
So I also want to say thank you, just while I got the stump here. Switching gears, as a parent of 2 seniors, it's been an honor to be to see my own children grow through this system. And I want to thank the committee for continuing to support our schools. I feel very grateful, both as a practitioner and being principal in this district for a long time, and now as a parent of twins, who is seeing their kids so well prepared for the next step in their own lives. So you're doing great work, and I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Carden.
If nobody else can ask a question, I'll ask you.
All right, Len, thanks.
Mr. Dingman. Overall, your enrollment numbers are down.
Yeah.
Pretty significantly from the high.
Yep.
Resources are going to be extremely tight after next year, and I'm just, we do want to support you, and you didn't specifically ask for more FTE, which is good. But how do you sort of see making more improvements with the existing staff, or possibly if you have to reduce staff?
Yeah. So I think for sure we're seeing our enrollment. This is by far the lowest enrollment since I've been in the town, and we have already made I think 2 years prior to this a cut in our classroom rounds, expecting that those numbers were moving down. So we're still, I think our classroom sizes are around 20, and we'll look at enrollment in the future. We also are the buffer zone between Brackett and Pierce, and so we work pretty closely with Dr. Homan as a place saying we're ready for students. I would imagine that Dallin will probably remain fairly level where we are right now, and that it's a good status quo to be in. I think we're resourced fairly well. Where I think in our data, where our data is telling us stories is in the support that we're offering for students with IEPs. And we would like to continue to move to a model where our students are receiving those supports in their general education classroom, that's their core experience. In our system, lots of kids are receiving that tiered support of small group outside the classroom. And I believe why our data is moving is because we are moving that support more and more into the classroom, and we need special educators and paraprofessionals to make sure that classroom teachers are able to plan for a differentiated environment. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Great, thanks. Just want to thank you for your years of service as well to the district, and for continuing to innovate. You've shifted your focus different ways as needed, first on the SLP, building that, supporting that, and now I think last couple of years it was on math, and now it's ELA. So thank you for being flexible and continuing to innovate.
Thanks, Len.
Superintendent.
Dallin is one of the schools in the district. It's probably the model school in the district for taking what students need and what their experience is and putting it right in the center of their planning and decision making. And I think you gave a lot of really excellent examples of that. But when I think in a lot of cases about what deeper learning can look like, there are examples at Dallin. Just today I was talking about the tech and space plan that we're working on as one of the working groups. And one of the pieces that they want to look at is how do we replace furniture in a way that creates classrooms that are aligned with the values in the strategic plan. And Dallin has already done that work in a lot of classrooms.
I'll get back to you, Fran. Sorry, I haven't got to you.
So we were like, we need to talk to Thad and find out what that process looked like and what that might cost so that we can figure out what it could look like to expand that into other schools. And so I just want to say thank you for, as Mr. Carden said, constantly innovating, and for doing so in a way that asks the kids first. What is it that you need? What's going to work for you? And let's design around that, because that's really the spirit and the core of the strategic plan and the work we're trying to do. So
lots of times I don't even ask, and they just tell me anyway. So
see, there you go.
Yeah, appreciate y'all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Next up is Arlington High School Superintendent.
All right, Dr. Janger, will come on up.
That was quite an act to follow. I have many fewer words on my presentation.
I mean, that and the dog.
What's that?
That and the dog.
That and the dog. I wanted to keep the dog. I was like, could I just put him right here? So I don't have a dog, but I do have a mammoth. And so that's, if you haven't been introduced to him before, that's Cyrus. that Cyrus the Mastodon, but who I have unfortunately recently been told, of course, just as we've launched Cyrus the Mastodon, the Russell House has discovered he's a mammoth. So he's having a little bit of an identity issue right now. We're waiting for some enzyme testing before we roll out completely with Cyrus's rebranding, but Cyrus is apparently a woolly mammoth. I just taught everyone what Mastodon was.
That's the software.
What's that?
It's a social media network.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, like all of the schools in Arlington, we are continuing to commit to teaching all children and the whole child. The language in our mission statement talks about learning, connecting, and caring as a community, providing a safe, supportive, and nurturing environment, and focusing on knowledge, values, and intellectual curiosity. That statement predates the belonging and growth goals of the district, but is consistent with the goals that we've had all along. If you scroll ahead, a big feature right now of life in Arlington High School is sort of two things. One is growing enrollment. The rest of the district's drop-off has not quite hit us yet. We're still in the high part of the curve, and the building growth. So it is an amusing thing to note. We are at 1683 this year, which is about 50, 60 more students than we sort of planned for in the growth projections for this year. It's going back to the higher end projections. And the projections that we're looking at for next year, which I think are most likely, there are a few different projections, have us at 1749. And for those of you who are keeping track, the build size of the new high school is 1,755. So the people who did the demographic work on that and argued with the MSBA to get it, we did not overbuild. And it looks like we'll probably get up somewhere around 1,900 and then drop down to about 1,850, which is a really nice size for the community in the building. We can handle that many students. One of the challenges we are dealing with this year is that, and we'll talk about that some, is that enrollment is still requiring us to increase staffing, so we're a little tight right now around the building with larger class sizes, difficulty with students if they need to change classes because classes are full. So wins. We have spent a lot of energy in building a better climate and culture in the school, both physically and emotionally. So we're on track for that new Phase 3 athletics wing. That's still putting a lot of pressure, particularly on the administration. I realize that even though the worst parts of the construction were Phase 2, the planning component of we're about to lose our construction company and we now want to get everything working is taking up a lot more time and energy on our parts. Finally, Liz, I think, is getting sucked into more and more of this than she likes as well. And so that is something we're really aware of. We continue to have high MCAS performance, not seeing some of the drop-off that we see in other communities, with significant growth in science scores in particular. Overall, they've had a +5 growth just last year, with our Asian American component having an 11% increase in students testing in the proficient and advanced level, and +7 in Hispanic students. One of the things that we are particularly happy about is we've been working really hard on culture and climate. And over the 3 years post-pandemic, there's a lot of different ways of looking at the numbers. This is probably the one that makes us look the best, but there are other versions of it. Over the 3 years post-pandemic, we've seen a pretty steady increase in all of the indicators. So in climate, we actually have had a 21% increase in students reporting strongly favorably, a +13% increase in students reporting strongly favorably for teacher relationships, a +12% increase in belonging, and +11 in rigorous expectations. Those are the biggest areas of growth, and those are areas we'll be talking about in our strategic plan. They were focused last year, they've been focused in previous years, and we continue to see those showing progress, which is positive. At the same time, our students continue to seek higher and higher levels of challenge in coursework. So we have a significant increase in the number of students taking AP exams and the number of AP exams students are taking. So if you look over the last year, we were up 16% more exams overall, and we had 29% increase in the AP scholars. So those are students who are taking 3, 4, or 5 APs and getting 3 or 3.5 depending on them. So the students are taking more exams, they're continuing to get high scores on them. And then, you know, a big win is, it's hard for me to believe that we've actually only been in the Phase 2 building for a year. It was only last December we were trying to get credit card readers for the student cafe, and that's now really a whole new active program that's serving a lot of students and creating a really positive environment in the school. Come by, buy merch. The Smart Lab is, if you go around, changing signage, murals, arts opportunities, all around the building. We're starting to fill that space. When we first moved into the building, a lot of people commented it looked like an Apple store. It was very white. We are filling it with color and student art, so that's getting pretty exciting. And then the last,
over here.
what's that?
Send
Yeah,
some
we're
over
working
here.
on that too. It's in the works.
We are popular, right? We have lots. I think you guys should take the last year's banners, should be your pretty standard way to decorate this space. We have the new banners going in, we'll bring the old banners here. And then one of the things on top of everything else is trying to get kids back in school. And so that, again, was a big push last year. It's been a big push over the last few years. And our attendance rates, in spite of issues with realistically chronic absenteeism, is still an issue. There are certain populations which we're struggling to be successful with. But overall, actually, our attendance rates now are surpassing our pre-pandemic levels, which is pretty exciting, given the amount of time and energy people are putting into individually and collectively working on those issues. So, next slide. I slipped this in after I sent it to you. Alpacas, he's got puppies, we've got alpacas. I'll be talking a little bit more about the wellness workshop and the Voices United, but we brought in therapy alpacas into the courtyard. That's the new courtyard, which is only just started being used by students. We're still doing a punch list because the floor is not level. Okay, so now, chugging along through some of the things I gave highlights of. So this is our 3-year trend lines on the Panorama Culture and Climate data. And as you can see, all of those lines are in the trending upwards. The one that is trending upwards the least is cultural awareness and action, which had a dip but is returned to its previous levels and is still pretty high. And I'll talk, when we talk about challenges, about the fact that belonging is the one that is going up the most, but it remains, or among the most, but it remains among the lowest lines, right? So we are, the cup is either half full or half empty, but it's only half something. And we are continuing to work. The reason I said half full, I was going to say half empty, but the reality is there's a lot of kids in the middle. So the number of students that are on the I don't belong at all is relatively small, but it's still 10 or 15%. So it's still a number that we want to address. Sliding down. So again, I mentioned this in the wins. That's just the chart that outlines it. So the top line there is the number of AP exams that we are having students take every year. And you can see that is outstripping the number of students. So more students are taking more exams. And then if you look at the blue and yellow line, that's the total number of students and the total number of students with scores over 3 and above, which is considered kind of a passing score on the AP. And that proportion is pretty steady and pretty high. Okay, so challenges. Construction time, demands, transitions, one thing I've mentioned already. Enrollment growth and staffing changes. We're up about 75 students with only about 1.6 new staff this year, mainly for programmatic reasons. We continue, and I will say this as often as I can, to not have enough custodians for a 400,000 square foot modern building. We have 10 or 12, depending on the day it is and how we count, and the estimated number would really be closer to 20. So, you know, every year we're trying to add a few more. The custodians do a really good job, but things get broken, things don't get fixed as quickly, and so maintaining this beautiful building is going to be important. And the reality is that this condition is not a new one for Arlington High School, but there's a reason why we ended up having a building that was falling to pieces, because the maintenance over time had not been consistent. So we continue to have ongoing gaps for traditionally underserved populations. We'll talk about, if you go through the report, there's a lot of subgroups that are mentioned in there that in different areas are not being served as well. And we have a desire to increase equity of access to higher levels of curriculum. So these issues of disproportionality continue to be an issue. And we continue to see that in things like if we make programmatic changes, we often see that that removes obstacles and creates opportunities and motivation for different populations of students who are not accessing higher curriculum to be able to make those choices. We've seen that in English 9. This year we're seeing that with AP African American Studies, which is now got 4 times as many African American students in the junior class taking AP History than in the past. That's a pretty substantial difference. And as I said, belonging remains half full with those gaps for African American, special education, and transgender students that are larger than the average. So our goals. I will say that in many ways, the first 2 goals are what I would say is an example of going slow to move fast. So if you think about the ILT initiative, which has been going forth district-wide, the Arlington High School ILT spent 2 years ago a long time forming and figuring out what their focus was going to be. Last year, one of our initiatives was the teacher learning walks. Those teacher learning walks focused on academic discourse. It's interesting to see that that's the same focus as is happening at the elementary level. That's not surprising because academic discourse is at the core of deeper learning, right? It's students not just working on knowing the content, but on thinking about what they think about the content, learning ways to learn that from other students and to share that with other students, because that process of engaging with discourse is where you're really going to have those connections to real life, to relationships, and to students' identities. So last year we did the learning walks focused on academic discourse. That was very well received by the teachers, shows some positive impacts. It's hard sometimes to take these larger school-wide impacts and have you've got a larger school-wide intervention and you see a larger school-wide impact. There's a lot of moving parts in the high school, right? So saying that this led to that isn't easy, but we have positive feedback from the teacher, positive experiences from the students. It's consistent with the data that we get through things like empathy interviews and other conversations we're having with students. So we have moved forward on continuing these learning walks this year with a broadened focus. Similarly, we have these academic teacher committees, which again is something that was built into the contract, which gives us an opportunity to have this teacher-led workshops. So one thing, and I'll sort of go talk a little bit more about this, learning walks and committees are similar but different, right? And the simple way to think about it is that hang on, I had it in my notes down here, that committees are task-oriented with a deliverable product meant to have an impact on the school as a whole, whereas the learning walks are experience-oriented, without a formal deliverable, but building on the teachers modeling experiences of deeper learning with each other and trying things out in their practice in a safe environment. Those 2 things working together, we're already seeing create real sort of generative work because the teachers over here are thinking about how they implement things in the school as a whole, and over here trying it out with their colleagues in a safe place. So, strategic academic goal 1, the teacher learning walks. So again, as I said, the objective is to foster equitable access to higher level learning, to promote deeper learning through structured teacher collaboration and reflective practices. So the activities are the learning walks, and the focus on equitable learning is the focus of those walks. So we've talked a little bit, I don't know that I have to go through all of it, it's on the slide. Next slide. So the process of the learning walk, as we've talked about before, is they have a pre-observation conversation in which they identify the research focus, the practices that they would see in a classroom, and how they would look for that and talk about it. They then do those observations over the next couple of months. And then in the post-observation meetings, they reflect and they share their insights, rinse and repeat. And we'll be doing that 2 times. If you look at the list, going to the next slide, I mean, I can talk through, but it's pretty clear as you see that all of these are expanding in different ways. Focus is on serving populations that are traditionally underserved, changing discourse practices in classrooms, changing opportunities for students to have equitable access to curriculum. These focuses came out of 2 meetings in the spring where the teachers reflected on what it was they were doing and thought in groups and individually about what things they wanted to focus on more deeply. what I'm expecting is some of these will become very exciting, some of these will merge together, and some of these will not pan out. Right? The teachers will decide that they're not finding that level, that direction of inquiry to be positive for them. So then, the committees. So again, the committees are meeting on alternate meeting times, and again, focusing on the same issues, right? Equitable access to higher level learning and deeper learning. So the idea there is that those collaborative teacher-driven committees are focusing on actionable products. So the focus there again, next slide, is to be much more focused on the traditional inquiry cycle, right? Because it's not about reflective practice, but about inquiry. So the committees are established, they've been defining their problems of practice, they're now at the point where they need to deepen their understanding. Because one of the problems we know is we'll often jump ahead from how do we deal with attendance, we yell at kids who don't come to school, but actually understanding what the problem is. So our expectation is that over the next couple meeting cycles, they're going to be looking at research and looking at techniques for gathering information from and about the students that they're trying to support in order to make sure that that's a deep inquiry process. And our expectation is that this cycle may be a 2 to 3 year cycle. If they come out at the end with a very clear focus on what and how they need to study and what and how they need to try out at the end of the year, that's a group that has made really significant progress. Because one of the things to realize for many of these things, you know, an example of what might actually be the problem of practice is systemic racism. And if you've discovered that systemic racism is the fundamental problem, that's not something we're going to figure out a solution to in 3 to 4 meetings, right? So if you've opened that window and figured out what the focus is on something at that level of complication, and then figured out how you can get some purchase on that in your class, that's a good year's worth of work. So then moving on from that, so these are, yes, and these are the committees. Again, you can see similarities, there's overlap. There are also some committees not on this list that are dealing with sort of more specific tasks, right? So there's a teacher appreciation committee that is organizing the teacher belonging activities. They're doing something somewhat less reflective. They know what they're going to do. There's an advisory committee working on organizing the advisories that they already know what it is they're going to do. Next slide. So culture and climate. So last year, our culture and climate goal was reopening the inclusion workshops, which we had stopped the second year of the newly started wellness workshops, and continuing the Voices United anti-bullying workshops. At the same time, the affinity and anti-bias groups were starting to gather together and move. That's really taken a lot of speed now. So that is the new focus, really the primary focus for this year. But all of these things are working together because the affinity and anti-bias club leadership are working with the administration, with each other now to plan and support the Voices United workshops for next year, to plan and support the wellness workshops, and to plan and support the inclusion workshops. So those become venues for the students to learn how to work together and to work together with the administration. So the next slide. So specifically, right, these things are happening. I think there's one more slide down. Hang on. Yeah. So that's what I just said, so we don't have to continue saying that. This is an example of our wellness workshops which just passed. Roger makes his second appearance. Along with the alpacas, if you go into the high school right now, we have the free December pinball machines. There's a pinball tournament. The teachers there are having a teacher's coffee breakfast over at the new cafe. I had some good pictures of the students, but I didn't get them into the slide. And Roger's been making his way through the students. But the more important part was this. So with the affinity clubs, we're now bringing more structure to that. So what has happened is that the anti-racism working group, which was a coordinating group for all, both allies and affinity groups, is taking the leadership role in structuring the affinity group meetings. The affinity group leaders are meeting on a monthly basis, advisors and staff, and bringing more structure to defining what the affinity groups are, working with the students to more clearly train and define the role of the advisors, to build out the student leader roles, identify supports, and collect and analyze feedback. Already what's happening is that this group of folks is helping give feedback onto the other inclusion and climate activities in order to give those more structure. And then last is the strategic family engagement goal. So last year's goal was to create more regular cycles of feedback around grades and interim grades. That was well received and pretty successful. We saw much more consistency in communication with parents around that and got some positive responses from the parent surveys. What we are working on now, because again, communication was still a low, and so systematizing all of that communication into the newsletter. So the newsletter now we're 3 months in, I think, is now a central repository to give people information of what they need to do, put things together in terms of helpful reports, and make sure that all of the information people need is in one consistent place. It's not flashy, but hopefully it's efficient. So, like we've said, we're seeing an improvement in the quality or the responses to our communication, and I will say we're also seeing a higher response rate on the survey, which with the increase in outcomes seems like a double positive, right? If more people are responding at all, it means more people are in communication. So resources to support success. So the new building was designed to open with 1,750 kids and 4 deans. There's a dean's office on each floor of the upper part of the building, and then the principal's office is on the first floor. We requested a dean last year. We understand that there are budget issues, so we did not get that, and we were requesting a counselor because at the same time, the idea of the house structure was to have 1 dean and 2 counselors. The good news is that staffing will keep us steady for the foreseeable future. We'll be building a new wing on the school before we start asking you for more counselors and deans, given that structure. And I will say that with the climate and culture, with the attendance issues, that individual teacher support from the deans and the counselors and the coordination tightly is something that's really important. The deans are finding they are stretched pretty thin right now with the number of students and the demands of the students they have. So we're asking, as we did at the beginning, for an enrollment increase in staffing. We received a staffing increase this past year for 20 students, but had 75 to 80. I think I read a different thing on each slide. I should go back to the original, but roughly 80 students. And we're expecting another 60 for next year. So with roughly 140 additional students, just to keep our staffing levels even, we would be looking at 12 additional staff. We understand that that's a lot of staff to ask for. That gets us up into the millions in terms of staffing costs. And we will make do with whatever we get, but we do appreciate being considered for that. That's how already talked about custodians. And I think it is notable that when we look at the ratios, the high school has been pretty consistently making more efficient use of its staff than other levels, even though we have big kids. And, we understand, honestly, we are thrilled that our elementary schools are well-staffed. It means we get kids who know how to do the work. And a lot of the success we see in students doing high-level curriculum is because we have an effective K-8 through education system. So nothing there. And then the last is supporting stipends in order to support these is something that has been an ongoing issue. Right? The affinity club leaders, we now have somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 affinity clubs. We stipend those leaders because it's a demanding position. We have expectations for what they're going to do. Advisory teacher committees, learning walks, making sure those things are running together is not a very expensive ask, but it's something that's important. And I believe that is my last slide. Thank you.
Members of the committee.
I just wanted
Leo,
to...
go ahead.
Oh.
I'm very happy to have you and Zach in here because I figured if anybody knows what's going on in the high school, it's you.
Well, we were waiting for, no offense, something relevant to us, but as high schoolers, I just wanted to emphasize the recommendation for custodians. I think that is like one of the most physical issues I do see, like with my time at the high school, and I think 20 custodians is a very like minimal like request. I think that it's just it's such a massive school, and that as Dr. Jenger said, that there is 15 now. It's just like it's just not enough people to maintain the school, and I think at the rate that I've seen that the school is actually, it's like it's not just about like cleanliness, it's also about like just like the physical, like kind of like the school is kind of deteriorating a little bit, and it's very new, and if you were someone that was unfamiliar, you would be surprised that the school is 2 years old, and I think I think it's very an important issue, and I think that maintenance should definitely be more custodians.
Thank you. Mr. Thielman.
Thank you. Could you just sort of elaborate a little bit on some of the specifics of the deterioration?
Well, it's just, I mean, there are efforts for like, there's only so much you can do to control, high school kids. So there are like people eat, wherever they want, and it gets like for some high schoolers, it gets a little rowdy, and there's like, Sharpie on the wall sometimes. It's like there's only so much you can do to really control that, and a lot of the light fixtures you can see are broken, and there's also been issues in the bathrooms with like sensors not working in the battery system. And I think that's also an issue with the teachers, with the lighting, and I think it's just another issue that affects everyone, and it's obviously an issue of just not enough people.
Thank you.
By the way, for your information, Mr. Thielman chairs the high school building committee.
Oh.
So, Dr. Allison Ampe also serves on that committee along with the superintendent. So you've got a couple of people here who have been very active in terms of getting this building in place, who I'm sure would love to hear more from you.
We have talked about the sensors at the building committee and the lights. Not the markings on the wall, though.
Well, it's not that like crazy compared to the old building, but again, it's like one broken window, it's like then you see more and more.
Yeah, thank you very much, Zach.
Dr. Allison Ampe.
Thanks. So first,
You're Leo?
Yeah.
I'm Zach.
You're Zach. Leo, thanks.
okay.
Dr. Allison Ampe.
And then I want to ask,
Okay, so first, I just wanted to say that, as a quick aside, looking at the attendance, I wanted to point out that the African American attendance at the high school is significantly better, at least for the absent 10 or more days. It's significantly better than the average attendance, and than any of the other subgroups. So someone somewhere is doing a good job. I don't know who. I hope you figure it out and can pass it on. But that's one thing. So my real question is kind of a multi-part thing, but it all drives to the same thing. So when I look at your SIP on page 9, it's got the achievement scores and the high needs, low income, students with disabilities. The numbers are all up, which is great. But then when I go to page 10, it shows that the meeting and exceeding numbers, especially for the low income, are splitting further. There's a bigger gap. And that's kind of weird given that the average score was up, but fewer people are meeting or exceeding. So apparently some people are either doing much better or some are doing much worse. And then when I look at the numbers at DESE for the MCAS, overall, I noticed that the number who are not satisfactory or not, don't pass the bottom amount has increased significantly in the past few years. In '22, it was 1%. In '23, it was 2%. This year, it's 4%. And the same actually for math, well, kind of similar. In '22, it was 1%. In '23, it was 0%. In '24, it's 3%. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to, my concern is it sounds like there's a group who are doing worse. And I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Superintendent.
Do you want me to start on this? So this is a phenomenon that I pointed out in the outcomes report, but we had a lot going on in that report around and you hear about this like in the news too, the deepening divide or gap in income inequality, in sort of access to resources, and we're seeing that, and also the diversification just of our student population here in Arlington has shifted pretty considerably, and we were looking at some data that showed that as well. The range is wider, and the range is wider also in a lot of other factors in families' lives. So the income range that we see families come to us with is much wider also. The needs range, like when families fill out, we have, I'll probably talk about this in a report in the spring, but when families fill out the form on our website that says family assistance, what kind of assistance do you need to help your child with school and to be successful, the different kinds of things we're hearing about is a very wide range of things as well. And so, and I say that not to say that these are social forces beyond our capacity to address, because we're trying to, and we're putting new things in place to try to do that. But I do think some of the achievement distance or range you're seeing is to some extent a reflection of some of the forces at play in families' lives external to school. And all of that comes into school. And so we have to find ways to try to alleviate any of the pressures that might be happening that we could have some degree of control or support around. And I imagine that some of those bright spots that you're noticing for some focal groups around, say, attendance, that's one place where we're doing that well. So we should go take a look at that and try to do something about it. And Dr. Jenker, specific to the high school, I don't know if you have reflections about that deepening range, but.
I mean, I think what Dr. Homan said is true. I mean, first, we know that the pandemic particularly was harder on subpopulations that have high needs, right? If you were low income, you know, high income folks had all these sorts of resources to insulate themselves, and low income folks did not. And we saw that in our survey data, we saw that in our grade data, we saw that in our experience data during, you know, and in the MCAS immediately following the pandemic. Those echo effects are still there. So that's one. Two, these are still, particularly, you know, the high needs population, it's a small number of students. So demographic shifts are going to show very big impacts, right? Which doesn't, the 16 students is 16 students we need to work with, right? But it's 16 students. We have changed some of our programming demographically, so we're retaining more students in the building who might not have been maintained in Arlington High School in the past. And we are seeing some changes in demographics in terms of people who are coming to us with higher needs. You know, and sometimes that's hard to talk about, right? Because again, it's 16 kids, 20 kids, right? It's not that there are stories behind each of those students. But so that's a real thing that we know is happening.
Well, it's helpful just because we're going to be building, I mean, we're starting to talk about the budget and everything, and this gives us some more information in terms of what we need to be bolstering. So thank you.
And what Dr. Homan said is true. I mean, what we have talked about in terms of creating safe spaces and affinity spaces in the school, where we see success with students who are not being successful is when they have a safe space, right? When they have a place that they know where they can sort of one-stop shop, people who know them, see them, have access to getting them resources, and help navigate through the school. That does a lot to offset the impact of being, you know, the various sorts of ways that one is a high-need student.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? You're hearing, seeing none. Zach and Leo, are you good with this? You're our expert. Thank you. Superintendent.
I'll just say it's no small feat to move through a 4-phased building project during a pandemic on site and keep so many of these newer initiatives rolling. We said at the beginning of the year that one of our big goals was going to be to make sure that we implemented our bargaining agreements and the plan that we had put forward, and to do so with coherence. And the high school has done all of those things and opened a building. And it is a beautiful building, and one that we're committed to making sure that we support. And we've had, you all just named a couple things on the punch list, and are things that we really need to make sure that we're putting the resources together to support. And I'll talk in a minute about budget requests, but the ones that we're getting from all of our schools, and notably the high school, are requests that promote inclusion in academic spaces and being seen and belonged in spaces like affinity spaces in other parts of your school day. And so that is going to promote access, it's going to promote belonging, it's going to give students a space to be belonged academically and know that we believe in their academic capabilities, while also giving them space to process their experiences in our schools. So thank you, Dr. Jenger, for all the work you've done and that the staff have done and taken on and taken leadership over to make that happen. And thank you all for participating in all of those endeavors as students. And appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next will be a budget update. Mr. Gorski.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to talk about the current fiscal year before passing it over to the superintendent to talk about the requests that have come out of our budget collaborative meetings that we've held over the past couple of weeks with our principals and department heads. I want to talk about the positives and challenges in the current year before kind of walking through the report itself. One of the main positives is that I had mentioned at the last school committee meeting that I attended that my deputy would be starting, and he started 3 weeks ago. So Tam Tran is now part of the business office, coming to us from Brookline, where he was the data director. Previous to that, he was the deputy CFO in Lowell. So he's really diving into data, so that's been very helpful. And in fact, he's working on creating dashboards where principals and department heads will have real-time financial data. And then once we roll that out, we'll look at rosters and providing that data in real time for our principals, department heads, and also school committee. So this budget update is similar to the report that we began at the meeting about a month ago, but it's been refreshed for data through the end of November. Some changes on the report. I want to talk through a couple of the challenges before going through the numbers. One, our payroll manager, we're thankful, has started to work again, working part-time from home. I mention this because, as I mentioned to school committee at the last meeting, the payroll has not been encumbered this year. I know that's something that's been typical, and school committee would expect to see that. So that hasn't happened as of yet. When we talk about looking at the data, obviously the business office went through a lot of turnover last year at a time when the account structure was being revised and the budget was being passed and uploaded into Munis. So there's been some cleanup that has started and is ongoing. And I reference it because when we look at some of these numbers, I would expect these numbers to change as we go throughout the year. So you're going to see some deficits and you're going to see some surpluses, and I think a lot of that is related to coding. As you can see here from the chart, as you can see here from the chart, we are projecting, we've expended about a third of our budget, small encumbrance number of about 9%, and again, there's no payroll involved in that. And then we're projecting out essentially the remainder of the budget. This report includes a look at our general fund budget, which is from town appropriation, our grants, which include federal grants, state grants, private grants, and our revolving accounts. The general fund report looks at spending through November 30th, as I mentioned, and is summarized by object code. Now, when we're doing projections, or when I'm doing projections, when we're looking at payroll, we have payroll up through a certain time period, which would be the end of November, and then we're looking at number of payrolls remaining, and that varies depending on position. So projecting at that spending throughout the remainder of the fiscal year. When we're looking at the non-payroll items, we are expecting our departments and our schools to fully expend their budget. That doesn't always happen, but that's the assumption that's made. And then we have some accounts based upon circuit breaker, for example, transportation and special ed, that are going to be negative on the report, but actually are covered, and we will do transfers before year end. I had mentioned to the committee about a month ago, when I look at circuit breaker as part of this budget, I'm going to look to change the way we've utilized it. We have the opportunity not to just use that on tuitions or transportation. We can certainly use it for special ed payroll expenditures, so we can budget that up front and not have to. I'm trying to take us out of the mode of how many transfers that we're doing at year end. Mm-hmm. So just quickly walking through kind of what makes up the budget for those who haven't looked at this before. When we look at these columns going to the report, there's an original budget column that reflects the amount that was approved by the school committee for the FY25 budget. There's a transfer column, which reflects any budget transfers made between accounts as of the period ending date. It can also include carry forward purchases, carry forward orders. So sometimes we have purchase orders that carry forward into the next fiscal year because they haven't been paid yet. The revised budget column reflects the original plus the transfers. We have the expended column, which reflects actual expenditures posted in the financial system as of the period ending date. The encumbered column reflects actual encumbrances posted in the financial system. Encumbrances are when we put a requisition into the system, and expenditures when we've actually paid for something. And then we have the projected expenditures, and as I mentioned, we have a methodology for projecting out payroll and then our non-payroll items. And as I have a note here in the report, which ties to what I was mentioning earlier. Just because a line is in deficit or in surplus, those numbers, it's a snapshot in time. There is some cleanup that needs to happen in the accounting structure based upon the revision and some of the way the budget was loaded. So, and then another factor, so going back to the good, we're projecting out a surplus. Again, it's early in the year. When we're looking at projections, they get better as we go throughout the year and have more financial data. But one of the things that's one important factor in driving a particular surplus are vacancies. So we drill down on the number of vacancies, and I know that our HR director is working with my deputy, and I was looking at some of this data as well. We have 47 current vacancies across various departments. Now, this is obviously a moving number. Average salary, just looking at what that budgeted number would be, about $76,000. Average payroll period, average payrolls remaining, to come up with a number of about roughly $2.2 million. Now, it's important to note, even though we have some vacancies and we have efficiency dollars, that some of these items, some of these positions, like in special education, are mandated services that need to be provided and that are likely covered by contracted services. We also have a fair number of positions under facilities that are vacant, like electricians and plumbers, et cetera. And obviously, if we have areas of need in the district that need to be addressed by those particular trades, you need to utilize contracted services to fill those. Next page takes us into our object code, the budget by object code. I know this is the particular report that the school committee is used to looking at. As I mentioned before, again, when you're looking at some of these numbers, again, like the admin number, admin salary and wages, which are our central admin, our principals, you're seeing a projected number that looks like we're overspent. And when you look at our teacher salaries and some of our longevity and some of the other numbers, you're seeing numbers that are both negative, both in surplus and positive numbers in deficit. But again, this is something that we need to drill down a little further on. We're working with the Comptroller's Office to make some changes in Munis in the system, again, related to how the budget was loaded. When I kind of to highlight a couple of other numbers for the committee, and I had mentioned this number at the, if we go to the second page of the object code, the top there is a SPED summer school Hardy line that is, we have expended from last summer, just under $250,000. Again, this is a kind of a holdover from a summer program that existed at the Hardy previously. There are summer programs at multiple sites. The reality is that this deficit number is part of the larger SPED budget and is actually not a negative line. That's something we need to take a look at in cleaning up this data that, if we have an old account name for something, that's cleaned up to accurately reflect what's actually happening in the district now. And we have, if we come down, I'm sorry, probably adding numbers to these would make it a little simpler when looking at the report, but coming down several lines to 520404, which is contracted transportation. Again, that's showing a negative $500,000 for the remainder of the year. Again, this is a mixture of special ed, out-of-district tuition, McKinney-Vento related to our homeless students. Part of this will be offset by our circuit breaker, and part of the homeless transportation is reimbursable through McKinney-Vento. If we come down to the next page, again, we're seeing these are our non-payroll expenses. We're projecting that these will be fully expended. If you come all the way down to the second to last number, we have the out-of-district tuition number that I mentioned, which we're projecting out to be just over $1.4 million in deficit. The circuit breaker number revenue that we received last year, which is available for use in the current fiscal year, was $1,775,707. So those will offset those tuition numbers, as I mentioned, and the transportation. We're going to be receiving just over $1.9 million for circuit breaker in the current year. The way that circuit breaker works typically, and what is best practice, is that districts receive the revenue in the current year and have up until the following year to fully expend, to fully utilize those funds to offset special education costs. I'm going to shift forward to the next screen. Yep. So this is another way of looking at the general fund budget. This is a roll-up of what I had shared with the budget subcommittee. We're looking potentially at the budget through an org level report. I think we're going to keep, the committee expressed desire to continue looking at it through an object code level. This level is showing similar data. High school, as you can see as we go down, we have our schools, we have our departments. We have a mix of schools and departments that are showing both surpluses and deficits. What I would highlight about halfway down through the screen is the elementary system-wide total. You're seeing a projection of negative 1.5 million. Under superintendent administration, there's a 1.2 million surplus. And system-wide total, the last line, there is a negative 300,000. Again, going back to looking at the cleanup of data, I think a lot of this has to do, again, with the account revision and the way the budget was loaded into Munis. We're working on cleaning that up, and I think you will see, these are projected numbers, but you will see these go away as we go through the next couple of reports. The bottom line, as I mentioned, we're projecting just over a $1.4 million surplus. I would caution that that is, again, a snapshot in time, and would expect that number to go down as we go throughout the year and we fill vacant positions. The next slide is related to the budget category. This is the school committee votes the budget through budget categories. One item that I want to make of note, there was a budget contingency that was passed as part of the FY25 budget as part of the collective bargaining to cover the increases in the last teacher salary. You can see that line there of 1.25 million. The other line, again, this a consistent theme throughout the report, but you're looking at lines when you look at the elementary ed and you're seeing just over a $1 million deficit projected, and you're looking at some of the other categories like other, which includes facilities and some other items, and you're seeing a surplus number. Again, there's some data cleanup that needs to happen. We'll look at this and monitor it as we go out throughout the year, but I don't think that's a true deficit within that line. Again, projected numbers, but we will look at this if we need to do transfers, and part of the budget, part of the purpose of the budget contingency is to cover any shortfalls in some of the other categories. Shifting gears to the revolving account. So we have, Arlington and other districts have revolving accounts that are voted upon by school committee that for a distinct purpose, which covers the fees that can be, and also covered by Mass General laws, cover the fees that can be raised and the purpose that the revenue raised can be, what they can be spent upon. So this is to highlight some of them, some of the revolving accounts, some of which have budget numbers and some that don't. We have the first one is the athletic fees revolving, which has revenue of just over $11,000 in the current year. As we go down to the preschool had a budgeted number of just over 260,000. We've taken in that actual, the 190,000, that second line is the actual revenue that's been posted to Munis in the current fiscal year. And then the expected revenue is the 73,527. And this is being utilized, as you can see, there's a professional salary line and what's been expended out of that account. We have the building rental fee account, building rental fee revolving account that had a budgeted number of $500,000. We have received $61,555 so far, and we're expecting to receive over $400,000 for the remainder of the year. We look at the Pierce Field rental fees. That was budgeted at $20,000, and we've received $8,500 in the current fiscal year. The tuition and payments, we've received, there was not a budget line associated with this particular revolving account, but we've received just over $3,600 in the current year, and there is a professional salary line that's budgeted against that particular revolving account. We have the foreign exchange tuition revolving account. There was a budget number of $400,000. There are budget lines covering professional salaries, supplies and materials, and contracted services. We expect the expenditures to be higher than the budgeted revenue. And I know this is part of their revolving accounts, not only in Arlington, but in other districts, accrued larger balances during the COVID era, and it's part of a spend down of that account. There's the Bishop Bus revolving account that was budgeted for $100,000 in revenue, and we've taken in about a third of that in the current year, and that is to cover some salaries. So and then the final account is the AEA and other revolving account, budgeted for $20,220 and covering the union rep in that account. So the revolving accounts, again, as I mentioned, used for a specific purpose, and they typically come into play at year end. I know as part of which was planned as part of the spend down of some of the revolving accounts when I first started with the district in August, closing out the fiscal year. There were transfers that were done to move expenditures off of the general fund to close out the fiscal year. And then moving into our grants report. So the district receives various grants. Some are entitlement grants, like our title grants, Title I, II, III, and IV, and our IDA grant, which services our SPED, our special needs students. And then we have competitive grants where we actually have to apply for and are awarded those grants. So this is a mixture, excuse me, the grant report on the next page is a mixture of both entitlement and competitive grants. You'll notice multiple years on some of our entitlement grants. That's because we have a 27-month period where we can expend dollars. So it's not unusual to see a Title I grant in one fiscal year, and then for last year, for example, and then see a new allotment of that grant set up in the current fiscal year. We have grants that are covering mental health, nursing, Medco, obviously is one of our larger grants. As I mentioned, our special ed grants. And then we have a fair number of private grants related to the Arlington Education Foundation, which services various projects within our schools. And with that, I think I'm open to questions, comments and questions. Before returning before we start discussing the request for FY26.
Dr. Allison Ampe.
Thanks. Thank you for this, Mr. Groski. Just two questions. I know you spoke to some of this stuff. Oops, I'm on my question page. When do you expect that we will be able to encumber salaries, or are we just not doing that this year?
So I would expect that we would still encumber salaries. I think it's having our payroll manager back full-time.
Sure. Okay. And then when can we expect to have the numbers cleaned up, you know, given all the accounts and everything?
So we're working on it. I think we've made progress. I'll give you an example of something recent that popped up. We were looking at the budget transfer categories, and that's something that's in Munis, but not all of them were loaded in. so there was kind of a portion of them, which made it a little bit more challenging when we're looking at the budget transfer category report. We're working directly with the comptroller's office to clean that up as soon as possible, and I can update the school committee at the upcoming meeting as to the progress.
Okay, great, thanks. I'm especially interested in the ones where, you know, it's a big down or a big up, and it's because it's actually not referencing the right numbers and stuff, and. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, that's our priority in cleaning those up.
Great, thank you very much.
Any other members of the committee? I have one question. We have $11,672 hanging out in the athletic fee revolving account, and we're no longer charging athletic fees. So are we going to close that out and do something with that?
Short answer is yes. We would plan on spending that down. We certainly have expenditures that we would move to it, yeah.
Okay, because I'd like to see that account go away so we don't get tempted to start putting money into it. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Superintendent, you're up next with the budget request proposals.
Yes, so I'm going to go through a few very quick slides and then answer any questions folks have about the request report. So we're going to start by talking about what the budget development processes look like this year, an overview of some of what we committed to in the strategic plan for FY26, as well as a bit on an overall financial outlook for the district, sort of what monies we have to operate with in making decisions for FY26. And then we'll go through a little bit about the FY26 requests. So as the committee knows, but members of the public watching from home may not know, we start the budget development process. We actually start planning for it as soon as the school year launches. And then we kick off with our budget managers in November. We have budget documents available to them at that time, things like rosters and line item budgets, and ask them to think about what they're working on this year, what they can anticipate some needs might be in the following year. And we share a lot of data with them to inform those decisions. We have review meetings we had review meetings of staffing rosters for principals, members of the cabinet team, to make sure that we had the right data in for rolling over staff positions and calculating salaries. And we had a deadline of December 6th for budget requests to come in. Budget subcommittee met shortly after the budget requests came in, and we shared a preliminary list of requests. And then over the past couple of weeks, we have been meeting with budget managers from every single school, every department, and talking to them about what it is they feel they need as resources for next school year. From here, we will be talking to you tonight about requests. The school committee will need to vote to accept the town's appropriation, which Mr. Feeney and I are feeling is pretty solid on the number that I'll share later this evening. The budget priorities discussion will happen with the school committee. We're working on a forum, sort of an informational session for families to happen in January to talk through our budget development process and share some of the things that we're considering in developing next year's budget. And of course, you'll receive a proposed budget on my birthday, February 6th. Happy birthday to me. And then we'll have a public hearing on it. School committee will hopefully approve the proposed budget. We'll go to finance committee and town meeting. So I just want to give a quick overview. We shared this with leaders before they developed their budget proposals of the budgetary commitments for our strategic plan in FY26. So here are a few things we said we were going to do. We were planning on expanding deeper learning participation and other practices to the tune of $80,000. We were planning on continuing to expand librarians and try to get to full-time at all schools in FY26. That was a stated goal of the strategic plan for FY26. It's very much reflected in the requests that you got. We committed to valuing all staff with additional investments in competitive compensation in the amount of $1 million. That's well-timed because we negotiate with 3 units this year, more units than that actually, but 3 major units. Unit D, Unit C, and our administrators. We committed to improving our infrastructure with development and implementation of a space and infrastructure plan, which we're currently working on to support deeper learning efforts, and some of what we know will be in that plan has also been in our capital requests for this year. And we said that we would focus on sustaining collaborative partnerships by establishing some central expectations for before, after, and enrichment programs, and some leadership of out-of-school programming. It's something we said we would do. Whether or not we take that approach vector to priority 4 remains to be seen, but that was in the amount of $110,000. Now, we do not have all of those dollars necessarily to put towards all of these things in FY26, but I wanted to frame in terms of what we said we were going to be committed to, which is about $1.8 million in investments in FY26. We actually do have room to make decisions in that amount, and I think what you'll find is that a lot of the requests have to do with making sure that we are adequately staffed towards these priorities, because the vast majority of the requests are staffing requests, so we'll need to think about that as we're building priorities out and making decisions. A few considerations for the FY26 budget. We're projecting an out-of-district placement increase of 3.67%. We, like I said, are bargaining with 3 major units this year. We're planning on the contractual 3% increase for AAA as they enter contract year 2, and some projected increases in utility costs in the amount of $246,377. Not as much of a projected increase to utility costs as we had last year when we planned the budget. But again, utilities and some of the costs associated with our systems is increasing as we move forward into next year. Enrollments are obviously a major consideration. We've talked about them in our school improvement plan conversations. Secondary enrollments are going to increase after the elementary level levels off. We're currently up 64 students at Gibbs, around 30 at OMS, around 75, as Dr. Janger said, at AHS. We're down about 50 students at elementary, and some of the requests you're seeing come from elementary are in the interest of maintaining access for all students to core instruction. And so you are seeing asks, particularly in special education, service provision, intervention, and that is to enable more inclusive models for those things. And that's why those increases are there, even though you're seeing changes in enrollment. It's because they're trying to change the model for how we're providing supports to students. So that's worth considering as we move forward as well. Here is sort of an overall budget outlook for the committee to think about. We have an FY26 budget number, and this is the number I was referring to that Mr. Feeney and I are pretty sure is set for next year, of $103,630,672. We subtract from that the FY25 budget number. This is this year's overall budget, $96,521,248. That gives us an overall budget increase of about $7.1 million. When we take out our contractual obligations, COLA increases, when we take out our out-of-district tuition and transportation, anticipated utility increases, department budget adjustments, which we do have some that are coming in at a requested amount higher than a 2% increase. We do have inflation that we need to think about. Stuff does not cost 2% more. Stuff costs a lot more than 2% more these days. So we should take that into consideration. Maybe we don't want to budget for a 2% departmental increase. But that's what we've done for many years, and so we've set that part aside. When you do all of those set-asides, we're at about $2.5 million remaining funds, and we have, I'm sorry, I didn't fill in that final line. We have about $6.5 million in increases, which will be on some of the next couple of slides. So I want to talk about the requests that we've gotten. So overall, if you total all of the requests that we've received for the budget, and this includes all of the requests from budget managers as well as all of the requests from the AEA, thank you, Ms. Keys, spent a lot of time doing some extra homework and getting some things into our forms so that we could put them in the list. So I'm very grateful for that effort because it helps us see a true total, and it also helps us align requests that are duplicates with one another so that we can sort of see where are we in alignment, and we can sort of take those duplicates out of our total. But if you total all of those requests, we're at $6.5 million worth of requests. About 5.1 million of those are steadfastly focused on priority 1, which makes sense, frankly. They're focused on staff, on improving student access to curriculum, on curriculum work itself, on curricular budgets, and school-based budgets to support student learning. Of the requests, about 600,000 of them are towards valuing all staff. A lot of those are sort of aligned with staffing requests in order to make the case that we support staff when we can support them with manageable workloads, with the supports that they need in order to be able to deliver curriculum in a supportive way. But I would say, any contractual increases that we do this year would also go in that priority 2 category because it's aligned with those priorities. Priority 3 is the lowest number here, but I want to point out that capital requests are not part of this analysis. And our capital requests are all aligned with priority 3 for the most part. So all of the technology, Chromebooks, facilities, improvements that we're asking to make in capital, they would go under that priority 3 bucket, and that's not reflected here. And then about 550,000 worth of requests that pertain to priority 4 and supporting families and collaborative partnerships with families. And then you can see a distribution by school, sort of how those break out, with priority 1 being blue, priority 2 is red, priority 3 is yellow, and priority 4 is green. This is the district level line. A lot of those resources are school-based resources, but they're being asked for the whole, like for all of the schools, and so, or they're there to support some combination of schools, and so they get categorized as district. And we did do this by school. Even if it's a departmental request, we tried to align it with the school where we could. Okay, here's budget requests by location. Same rules apply. This is divided out by district and then all of the schools. AEA requests are wrapped into this, so are all of the departmental requests. And it just sort of shows you a distribution of budget requests by location. It kind of makes sense that AHS for the school-based requests, AHS, OMS, Gibbs are having the largest number of requests, given that they're also going to have the biggest enrollment boom next year. Here are budget requests by department. Our teachers do not disappoint.
Listen, it's the whole district, okay? It's everybody.
It is. There are many things we need, our educators tell us. We don't disagree with them. And then I wanted to say a little bit about overlapping requests. And I can do all of these and sort of filter out different things too, if there's a different way you want to look at it. And I've supplied the committee with some data that you can make a copy of and work with yourself if you'd like. But we have a lot of duplicate requests or requests that kind of overlapped with one another. I appreciate when this happens because it shows where our leaders are in alignment with one another. It helps us make decisions when we know that the departmental leader and the building leader are in agreement that this is something that's needed. It helps us out when we know that our teachers and us are aligned on something. Notably, the most alignment happened around special education resources, around specialist resources, specialized support, counseling. Yep, that's the last one. So this is the whole slide. Also libraries. There were duplicated reports in libraries. There were a lot of sort of duplicate reports also for the electives work that Addison wants to do to eliminate directed study. I think that might need to be work that happens over time, but they definitely want to get started on that. And so we had visual arts requests to both alleviate enrollment pressure and potentially add new electives at OMS. Same for some performing arts requests and other areas. And then at AHS, Dr. Jenger requested sort of a number of core educators to expand sections across core areas. And then each of the directors requested some number of FTEs for additional sections in their content area. And so the way that we tried to do this, and I've found a few errors just today as people were looking through things and sending me comments, so thank you, is that we allocated in a lot of the reports we gave you the FTE total to the school. And so we would take, if there was an overlap, we would take whatever the principal had requested and we would put that FTE, we'd calculate the salary on that FTE total And that would be in that total, that 6.5 million. And then we kept track when there was a departmental overlap. And we also totaled the overlaps in a separate column. So I'm happy to sort of try to walk through that. But in order to sort of keep things clean, we had to pick, are we going to do this at the school level or the departmental level? We did it at the school level because in a lot of cases, the principals are able to sort of say, I know I need, for example, 3.0 to add this many electives to the schedule, or I know I need about this many teachers to add across content areas, and the departments are saying, just my content area, I build the schedule for that, so that's what I need here. So we use the school total for that. But we had a lot of alignment. It was, I think, a lot of evidence of coherence in this year's requests. I'm very proud of the work that our leaders have done and that our educators have done to think deeply about what it is that we want to prioritize for next year. I think it's very aligned with a lot of the work that we're doing at the district level. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions about some of these. You have the rationales as well in the report. And you can use that to build some priorities when we come back in January. Happy to take questions.
Questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Morgan.
I just want to say, I can't remember when we met in budget. Like, was it like a week ago, maybe 10 days ago?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not more than 10 or 12 days ago. So and things were, it was good then. And the evolution from them to this report is significant and super helpful. And it looks like a lot of work. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I have to shout out we have some interns who joined us from the Harvard program, and Mr. Lee is one of them, and he helped me with some of these analytics, and so thank you, because you expand our capacity significantly.
Well, I asked for some of these things in budget. I wanted to see the breakdown by priority, and I wanted the AEA ones slid into the thing so that it all, like...
It's your fault.
It is my... I mean, I was one of the people... I'm sorry, and it's so helpful that it comes all into the same sheet, because then we don't lose it. And so I'm sorry and not sorry. So, but thank you. I'm deeply appreciative.
Any other questions or comments? Dr. Allison Ampe.
I know that the superintendent's already gotten one email from me today. And she responded, and I appreciate that. I think the questions that I raised weren't actually fixed in the spreadsheet, so.
In the one you all have, no, not yet.
Okay, it looked like it was supposed.
In the one I built and then refreshed stuff and sent you a new copy, but I'll fix it in the one you have too.
Okay, that was, I'll wait and see what happens, and then if there's more things I have questions about, that's good. I appreciate, just in terms of format, I appreciate how you've chunked it by departments and stuff, but I actually find it really helpful to cluster them by duplicates. So the one that gets the positions was the one I'd call that's like my leader one, and then the other ones of the set are all the duplicate ones. And so I don't know, just in terms of having a view, I think that, to me, that was really, really helpful, because it made me be able to see, okay, well, if we look at the high school, the departments don't think they need as many positions as the high school principal does. And so then the question is that because of a data error, actually there isn't something continued, or is that a difference in he's thinking about something else that we don't know about, or what? But it's helpful for me to see where there's discrepancies or alignment. So that's all.
Anyone else on the committee?
I'll just say I think that's welcoming you into the process we engage in, because then when we're asking questions, when leaders come to us, we can see,
right?
Okay, he said this, you're saying this, what's the difference? And, you know, people don't always agree, but that's useful because it helps us kind of understand the perspective of different leaders are going to come to it from a different perspective, so.
Right,
it's
I'm just
useful.
saying that I think having it arranged in that way instead of us having to like move the lines around.
Yep.
Okay, one of the things that we do here in Arlington, I don't know how many other districts do it, but we have the AEA come and make a budget presentation, which is really a excellent moment for us to get a reality check from the people who are actually in the buildings. And one of the things that I've really been proud of is how closely the AEA requests come to what the administration is thinking, which means that there's a lot of communication, a lot of thought, and commonality in terms of looking for the best way we can use our resources to support our students. So this is one of the things I'm most proud of the Arlington School Committee for doing. So, Ms. Keyes, it's yours.
Can I go from here, or do I need to be in the hot seat?
You can go from there.
Are you,
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I just got signed out of Google, so.
Okay, no worries.
Give me 1 sec.
I will say you have stretched my brain with this one. I feel like I'm really good at like doing research on things. My history and anthropology degree has been great for that. I'm a good classroom teacher. I took one macroeconomics class in college. Yeah. So this has been quite the adventure going through some of this. And then adding up numbers and being like, how did I get those numbers so I can fill out a form 30 times?
Sadly,
So.
this is more microeconomics, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, no, I'm aware.
Yeah.
So,
What is your file called?
budget request FY26. I sent it as a PDF. I can just share it with you right now if that's, whoops, that's the wrong button.
It's in Novus.
It's in Novus.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up as a PDF in Novus.
I can
'cause it's
just
gonna
send
be
you the,
fastest.
share the slideshow with you right now. If it pops into your email, and that's easier.
I can do it
There
this,
it
I
is.
can do
There
it
we
this
go.
way.
Okay,
Okay.
there you go, close enough. All right, so these are our requests. We go through a similar process every year, if you want to go to the next one, where we have school-based meetings and surveys where we ask literally every member to contribute, you know, what do you think should be the budget priority? What should we spend the money on for next year? And then we bring all of the data back to Board of Directors and we kind of go school by school and say, like, what did you hear? And that is our big, massive wall chart where we start listing everything and checking off when stuff comes up more than once. And then we take that data, we collate what the big requests were. We kind of have a conversation of if something wasn't super popular but really important in one school, does that get prioritized? And then we take those recommendations and we craft this presentation for you. So, you know, there was a lot of stuff this year, like that, which was surprising, but we'll get into that. So we want to acknowledge our realities. First of all, that the Unit A contract significantly has improved compensation, and that has definitely improved our ability to attract good candidates here to Arlington. So we are very excited about that. And we know that we are about to begin bargaining successor contracts for Unit C and D, so keeping some flexibility for salary increases there is important. We also know that Arlington is not getting as much money as we could be getting, that the state has chosen to use a lower SOA inflation rate in the past year and probably this year as well. I think that's costing us about $500,000. So that's, you know, we recognize that. We're also very aware that Chapter 70 might be taking a hit this year they're going to recalculate Medicare enrollment eligibility for the first time since the pandemic. So we may have a lot of people coming off of eligibility, which is going to affect our low-income numbers, which is going to affect our Chapter 70. So we know that's there. We're also recognizing that our special ed staff continues to struggle with overwhelming workloads. It's been exacerbated this year by unfilled positions, by the state implementation of a new IEP system, which has been incredibly onerous to roll out for our staff, and with continued increasing student needs. We have not seen a drop in student need. following the pandemic the way I think a lot of people thought that we would. We thought like needs went up when we were in crisis, but they would come back down again. We are not seeing that come back down again. Needs are still very high for a variety of reasons in a variety of ways. And a lot of facilities issues came up, and we know that you're not doing that in this budget, but this is the time we have to talk to you about that. So we're including a lot of capital stuff here, knowing that this isn't the right time to fix it, but this is the time that we have. So, and if you want to jump, we can. So general priorities across the board. There was a real desire to keep class sizes small, particularly at the K-2 level. Even our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers were saying, no, if you have to add a second section of 3rd grade to keep another, or drop a section of 3rd grade to keep a section of kindergarten, do it, because they see the benefit in the upper grades for having lower class sizes in the lower grades. We know that we need to add positions at the secondary level to address rising enrollment. Those are hard things for like teachers and paras on the ground to see, but like, so we don't see a lot of specific requests being like, we need another 0.2 high school social studies teacher, but we know that we need that. And that we are trying to provide the best possible education for all of our students in Arlington. And there are some of my cherubs there, because the teacher in me doesn't like doing slideshows with all words and no pictures. So I think this is our number. All I've done since doing this is realize why it's wrong in so many ways. Like I averaged the teacher salary using this year's salary chart, not next year's salary chart. So it's a number. It's there. Yeah, so you can see. I think the district corrected a lot of my mistakes when they did their calculations. So $1.85 million in additional special ed spending, $365 for paraprofessionals plus negotiated salary increases, some increases in SEL and behavior support. Those are 3 salary positions. Technology increases, which we can debate whether that's capital or not. I think it's important for learning, but okay. And then professional development and curriculum. And that's a real shot in the dark number, and I'll explain to you why. And then also, I didn't even attempt to budget out some of the facilities improvements because like I can't look those up on Amazon and tell you what I think they would cost. So, all right. So for special education, this was the top request across the district. It's something that we have continuously requested, and we continue to request. The rationale is varied depending on where you are and what you're asking for. There's a strong desire to increase more space in specialized programs, and going with that, to bring more specialized staff to more schools to decrease the need to send students to program schools. So if we want to keep kids in their home school, we need to have staff in those schools who can work with those kids, or people who can come to train the staff in those schools to work with those kids and meet their unique needs. We need to address higher level of student need. Even if you don't think, well, even if the number of kids on IEPs is not increasing, the demands of the IEPs are increasing on our staff. This would allow more sections of co-taught classes to alleviate those large classes that happen at OMS and AHS when you have to like lump a lot of kids with co-taught into a few sections because you only have a few special ed teachers available. And we're going to keep plugging away at this to provide clerical support so licensed educators can spend more time on service delivery and less time on paperwork. The budget impact of that, it's 17 Unit A positions, 5 Unit C positions. We're also asking for program lead stipends, and I'll get into that on the next slide for a second, and 2 additional SSPs at Menotomy. I don't know of anywhere we can magically make money for this, but it may be offset. If we can bump up our special ed staff, we're paying for contract services, we're paying for out-of-district costs, we're paying for compensatory services, and if we can offset some of that, it might help with the payment for it. So yeah, it's the 5 USC positions are 1 per coordinator to help with some of the clerical work. I was using the caseload data that we did to pull numbers of educators at schools. We've hired an additional special educator at Gibbs since then, so my data was that they have 6, they have 7. I'm still throwing in for 3. They could use more people. Everyone could use more people. an additional FTE at Audison, which would even out the 2 grades. Additional FTEs at the high school to help with their co-taught numbers and to expand some of the availability of their alternative programs and address their caseloads. 1 at each elementary school, and that is specifically because right now our elementary liaisons, for the most part, service 3 grades, and they're finding it very overwhelming, particularly with the new EL curriculum. And it would be really great if they could service 2 grades. And some of their caseload numbers are getting pretty high. 2 additional SSPs at Menominee. We opened a new classroom. We need more support down there. Additional per program at the elementary school and program lead stipends, because the SLC programs do a lot of extra duties. They're scheduling TAs. They're covering lunches for, like, having to make a lunch schedule for all the TAs. They are doing coverage if somebody's absent and they have to keep going with that. They are doing a lot of data collection. They have an increased parent communication. There's just a lot of like management in those programs that doesn't get any compensation at all. So we're asking for program lead stipends to sort of make somebody want to do that work right now. So Jenna Medeiros is here with me. She is going to talk a little bit more about sort of the mentality of some of our staff in making these requests. So she's on Zoom. Can you switch that over to her?
I think if you talk, you'll pop up, but if you don't, I'll fix it.
Jenna, can you
Hi.
talk?
Yep, can you see me?
Nope, we can't see you, so hold on one sec. Go ahead.
There we go.
There you are.
Okay. Sorry, my baby was asleep in her crib, and now she's not. So he is joining us as well.
This is baby and puppy day. How wonderful.
Yeah, she is. So I want to speak, so first to the Unit C positions, because this is sort of my baby, in addition to this one. Baby Scott and Unit C positions. So our special educators do an awful lot of paperwork. Some of it only they can do, right? Only they can write IEPs. They can write goals. They can write, grids. They're writing progress notes. Those are things they have to be doing. There are many things that they do not have to be doing that are really onerous, especially when you multiply it by the number of children on their caseload. So these are things like adding teachers to Easy IEP, which there's time for in the beginning of the year, but the students switch specials every 10 weeks. So every 10 weeks they have to go in and, remove the art teacher and add the music teacher, right? Remove the music teacher and add the tech teacher. And there are 2 or 3, specialists in each subject. Kids have different ones. So, and the program never eliminates teachers from the list. So the list you have to choose from of possible teachers is incredibly long. So it's just it's a big time suck that a licensed educator doesn't need to do. Something like they call it ad hocing their progress reports. It's about 5 clicks per parent, actually. Even if the parents are living in the same house, you have to do it separately per parent on the IEP, just to send a message that says your progress report is ready to view in Easy IEP, and then follow it up with an email. Right? There's just a lot of these purely clerical tasks that take up an incredible amount of time, often at the same time. A lot of these things happen kind of around term end, et cetera. So to have the number 5 that we came up with is 1 per coordinator, so 1 Unit C position per special ed coordinator that would take these responsibilities off the plate of our educators so they can have more time to make specially designed materials, plan their academic support classes, co-plan with the general ed staff, and all of the sorts of things that are directly impacting students and helping them progress and meet their goals. So that's one that's been really important to us for a while, that I think is an out-of-the-box solution to a lot of the difficulties that our special educators are facing. In terms of the middle school requests, so Gibbs made a really important step this year. They added programs. But there hasn't been really the increase in staff. They just sort of shuffled their staff around. So the next step in this process is to provide the appropriate staff for those programs that exist. So it should be a total of 9 at least, which is 1 per learning community to be an inclusion or a co-taught liaison, and then 1 per small group program. So Reach, Summit, Compass. I actually don't know if they're called that there, but
And the D program.
and the new one,
Yeah.
and the new dyslexia program. So, so that's 9. Of course, more is always welcome, but at a minimum, they should have 1 per learning community and then 1 per small group or for sub-separate program. And the same at Odison, but 2 per program, right? Because there's the 2 grades. What's happening now, in addition to, so right now at both schools, there's 1 learning community that does not have a special education teacher assigned to them, an inclusion or a co-taught liaison. And obviously that's sort of an issue equity-wise, but the reason we're really asking for it is because of the impact it has on students who qualify during the year. So if a student may be placed in a learning community, right, and then they start to have difficulties academically, social, emotionally, et cetera, they qualify for support, now they have to move teams, right? So they get to know this group of teachers, they build relationships, they are struggling, they qualify for special education services, and now they have to be ripped out of that team and put in a new one and start over with those relationships. And that's just not what's right for kids. So we should have the ability to service all students in whichever team they happen to be placed on if they're not identified before they come to us. So that's a really big reason to have that additional FTE at Odison and have the 2 or 3, depending on what document you're looking at the Gibbs. Overall, I think we're seeing increased numbers of students with needs, and we're seeing increased needs. So even in places where it seems like enrollment may be decreasing or numbers of students on IEPs is holding steady or decreasing, the numbers of students we're including, which is an excellent thing that we're doing, requires the more staff thing. And it impacts everybody. You know, it's the reason that it's the #1 request from all departments, right? Everybody who works in schools, you say, what do our schools need? They all say special ed. It's not just coming from the special ed department. So we really hope you'll take a look at this list and help our most vulnerable kids.
All right. Thanks, Jenna. Dr. Holman, can I have my pictures back?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Paraprofessionals. This was actually the #2 request of staff, was particularly a training regime. I wrote regime when I first did this. Regimen for new paraprofessionals. We hire people and lose them real fast every year, and we'd like to not do that. And a lot of times that's because they're just not well prepared for the role that they're in. We started having a guide for paraprofessionals last year that was written, and then the person who wrote it left, and it didn't get distributed until later in the year this year. And I think we need an onboarding process that is like, this is how you do your job. And I don't know exactly what that looks like. Maybe it's a mirror day. Maybe it's a day sitting down or a couple hours with an administrator after school. I don't know. But we need something more than just, you've been hired, you've gone through the HR paperwork, here's your kid that you're supporting, good luck, which is kind of what we're doing right now. We need to provide paraprofessionals with computers or Chromebooks. Yes, all of the paraprofessionals. They're struggling without them. We need additional classroom TAs in the elementary classrooms, particularly grades 1 and 2. And there's a request for a grade level TA in all of the upper grades at the schools. Just more bodies to help is the thing. And we need salary increases to keep pace with surrounding districts. I mean, we took a huge jump last year, which was great, but we have to keep that up or we're gonna fall behind. So budgetarily, we're not asking for a lot. $500 per school for some sort of mentor trainer stipend. It's also a great way to build some leadership in our paraprofessional group, to have one person at the school that they could go to and train with, or maybe it's a teacher in an SLC program who gets paid to train her new people. It's tied into the program lead idea. But we need something to train new hires. And I use the number 30,000 per TA. We actually pay our TAs more than that, so that's low. It's about 35,000 is what the district is using. And I ballparked a number on Chromebooks, $200 to $300. $100 more would meet our need and get one for every para. So hopefully, I know that's something our building principals support as well. The SEL behavior support is our next category. There's constant requests for BCBA support, which is a hard request to make because we have an open position right now we can't fill. So the district is trying to provide more BCBA support. We recognize that. I don't know why we haven't been able to fill that position, but it's definitely making things challenging. Counselors and social workers just don't have enough minutes in the school day to meet all of their student needs, particularly when they're spending a lot of time dealing with a student in crisis. The new clerical procedures have added considerable stress or time to workload. 504s are now being managed in EdPlan, which is great for me as a classroom teacher because I can pull them all up and get them right there. It's a lot more work for the people who have to make them, who are used to just being able to make a Google Doc and send it out to everybody, right? Like this, it takes a lot more time. And, you know, we spend a lot of time on a small number of high-needs students. And if we had some more targeted support for those kids, it would benefit everybody because everyone else would have more time to spread out. So an additional BCBA, an additional high school counselor, and additional elementary social worker at Bishop. The Bishop staff were very vocal that this was something that they felt they needed. There are 2 elementary schools that have 1 counselor, Pierce and Bishop. Pierce is significantly smaller, and Bishop feels that the level of need of their students dictates that they need somebody else, that the one social worker they have is just completely overworked. So that is their request. All right, next up. This is where we get to the stuff. So needing to continue to invest in technology, projectors and bulbs across the district. It's always fun when you hear the person who's like, oh yeah, like my room's the fuzzy room. It's because the projector's kind of fuzzy. So that's just we know that you're working on that, but that was a pretty strong request. Spare chargers for student Chromebooks and continued replacement of broken ones continues to be an issue. For reference, I started the year with 7 chargers in my room. I now have 1. I was down to 0 for a while, and then 1 came back. But they wander, and it's not the fault. Nobody's stealing the chargers on purpose and like trying to like racket the Audison and selling them on eBay or anything like that. Like they're kids. Things get taken by mistake. It happens. So we just that's a replacement concern. The availability of color printing is a continued issue. Some schools have it, some schools don't. Some schools have 1 machine but would like more, particularly with the EL curriculum requires a lot of printing. So the elementary schools in particular were requesting more availability of color printing and poster making machines, which I didn't even know these existed until 2 weeks ago, and now I'm really sad that I don't have one. But the there's a lot of work, and you've seen it in all the school improvement plans who have pictures of the classrooms and all these big anchor charts and posters that the teachers are hand drawing. And they say, well, I can print it out on a piece of like an 8.5 by 11. And if they have a poster machine, you can scan it in and make it big. But if you don't have a poster machine, you have to take the time and draw it all out by yourself to make the poster. So this is also one of those, like, some schools have them. Thompson's got one. That's a picture of it. Brackett's got one. They sent me a nice picture, too. Bishop had one, but it broke, so now they don't have one anymore. And the other schools just said they need them. So good luck. This is one of those things that took me 3 hours to find nothing. Good luck getting a price without filling out a form that says, I want a quote, and getting on a mailing list, because I'm on 7 of those right now. They still haven't sent me quotes. They just want to know about my district's needs. So I'm going to put your email addresses down next time. I think the cheapest I found one was $2,500, and the supplies are redonkulously expensive too. So color printing, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You can buy a really expensive machine and it costs less per copy, or you can buy a really cheap machine and it costs more per copy. I don't know which one works out in the end. I don't know if this is something we can it's too late. This week has been too long. I don't know if that's something we can add on to our RICO lease to get a color copier in each school. I don't know. It's there. These are the things the teachers say they wanted. And please keep our software licenses. Don't get rid of them. That was another loud thing we heard. All right. Professional development and curriculum. The paraprofessional one is duplicated here because it kind of fit both places. There was a request for more teachers to be trained as Wilson and OG reading specialists, which is interesting. This came from a few different schools. I did a cost outlet. It looked like $3,500 for Wilson, $5,000 for OG, and I don't know if we can get better deals on that through any of our connections, but that's like what Joe Schmo off the street would pay if they wanted to go get trained to be a Wilson reading specialist. Also, budgeting money for summer curriculum work. We used to have a practice in Arlington where grade levels or departments could have like an in-district PD day and sort of work together in district somewhere to do curriculum work, revise assessments, do common grading to align practice. And with the sub shortages and the focus on absences, we've stopped doing that. That work still needs to be done. So budgeting ahead of time for summer curriculum work so that teachers can work together to do curriculum revision, to align practice, it's important work. Special ed testing supplies, a few people said like it's hard to find them, they run out. I've got an idea on that coming down on a later slide. And then adaptive curriculum for the Stratton SC and adaptive materials, or SLC. That was a big ask from the Stratton community, that like the program over there would like to have a structured curriculum that they can use in the SLC classroom. So the ballpark is, the 300,000 is, I don't know how many people would be interested in the Wilson or OG training. So I threw out a number of like, I think that's like if 10 people did both or 5 people did one and 5 people didn't. So that's where that came from. And then now we're getting into the capital stuff. So I don't know if you want to stop and ask questions or you want me to just keep going.
Why don't you go and
all right.
speed through this, because
sure.
This
I know,
is
it's
not
late.
what we're going to be.
I know.
Yeah.
But this one in particular, lots of requests for accessibility improvements to make our schools more accessible for all students. So automatic doors, more of the like the push buttons that open doors. Evacu chairs for students to go up and down stairs if the elevator's not working, particularly at Hardy. This is a concern. And then stair lifts would be another idea on that. Hardy really wants a ramp to the Lake Street playground. On the next slide's a picture, I'll show you that. And then more elementary classrooms would like some sort of PA system where like the teacher wears a microphone and there's a speaker in the room and they can project. And so those were the ones that came up there. And then for facilities, you can look at you want to go to the next picture? My fantastic rendition of Google Maps, Lake Street. The Lake Street playground, the only way you can get to it is to either go out on the far side of the building and walk all the way around, or to go out the front door, go all the way out to the street corner and come back around in a wheelchair. There is no ramp from the Lake Street side of the building to the Lake Street playground. And that's, the teachers over there would like to get a way to get to that playground without having to go out to the street or to go all the way around the school. There's that. And then finally, the facility repairs. Dallin HVAC still isn't working properly. There's cold zones, there's hot zones. It rains inside at Hardy and the Audison, so they need some roof repairs. The elevator at Hardy is a major concern. It means kids can't get to the SLC classrooms when it goes down, so they have to like sit and work in the office for the day. The fire alarm doesn't go off at a good chunk of the Audison, So if you don't happen to have your door open and be near a staircase when the fire alarm goes off, you don't know the fire alarm is going off. So they're supposed to be fixing that over winter break, but it timed right when we were doing this, so they asked us to add it in. And Audison HVAC is still kind of chaotic. The climate is generally controlled by opening windows while the heat's blasting about 85 degrees. And there was mold issues over the summer in one of the classrooms that we're worried is just going to happen again this year. And I've also was asked to tell you today that it's cold in Menotomy. I'm sure you know that because it's cold in here. So, yeah. So that was our facilities issues. You can see there's a nice picture of it raining inside at the Audison on that next slide. That was from last April. So big picture recommendations. There was a strong request to conduct a vendor audit. And the idea of this is we seem to pay a lot more than we need to for a lot of the stuff. And people are saying, why are we paying more? Can't we get this cheaper? And I know, like, I'm not talking about just like ordering it off Amazon, but like, when was the last time we went out and looked at all the different places you could get things with a purchase order and decided that we're getting them at the cheapest place? Help with printing. Much of the EL curriculum requires printing. Continued push to get librarians at each of the schools and library paras to supervise the students and maintain the collections. Continued drive towards more ML support. These are things like we didn't have specific number requests, but a lot of people were like, we want more librarians, we want more ML support. And a couple of notes on that. One is that co-teaching for multilingual learners in gen ed classes has been really successful, and they'd like to try expanding that, where the ML teacher can like push in and not just like help 5 kids, but like co-teach the class, which may involve adding more MLs or shifting FTEs. There was also a request from the ML staff not to base the staffing numbers off the June testing results, because a lot of kids test out in June. But then we get new kids who move in over the summer, and if we base the numbers off the June numbers, that's like the lowest they ever go. So, and then finally, one of the big things that came out of these conversations this year is we'd like to start shifting some district-wide thinking from mine and yours to ours. We budget in buckets, and then people get very defensive of those buckets. So, like, this school has a poster machine. That school doesn't, but the teacher from this school can't go to that school and use the poster machine because that school's budget is paying for all the supplies for that poster machine. Mm-hmm. And if we could start to find a way, this came up with like the special ed materials as well. Like, is there a central repository? Because everything's sort of spread out and people have to like call each other and find things right now. Could we get all that stuff in one place? It might help with some of these shortages, perceived shortages, jealousies from between one school and another. So that is our presentation.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Morgan.
So the Bishop social worker one, so my understanding is that the reason that Bishop and Pierce, or that Bishop does not have a second social worker is that they don't have a separate.
Yes.
They don't have an SLC.
Yes.
Right. And so we have social workers that are attached to the SLCs, right? B. I was going to ask, and now I'm going to put you on the spot, Dr. Coleman. It's okay if you don't know the answer to it. Where did the Compass, the SLCC social worker go? Did they go to Hardy or did they stay at Brackett?
There's an SLC social worker at Hardy, correct?
There is.
Okay.
At the time,
so,
Brackett had
so we
theirs.
like, so there's now one social worker at Brackett, or there's
Two,
two?
but Brackett also has significantly more IEPs in the building than Bishop does. At the point that they kept theirs, they were about double the number of IEPs.
Okay. So, but it's not as
We
neat.
allowed that to stay.
It's not as neat as in my head that it's like, so there are.
Similarly, Thompson also has 2. They also have over 90 IEPs, where Bishop is in the 40s.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So it sounds like, as somebody who puts things in charts in her head, right? Everybody gets a social worker, right? Blip, blip, blop, blop, blop. Everybody gets one. And then the 4 SLCs, well, actually, SLCD doesn't get one, right? So A, B, and C get one that travels with the program. if we were to move the program, presumably we would move the human with them. And then we have two more, one at Brackett and one at Thompson, and those are around IEP caseloads. Okay, great, thank you. So not a question for you,
That's
as
fine.
it turns out.
Yep.
But a good place to ask the question, anyway.
Yeah, yes.
Any other questions from the committee at this point? Seeing none, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That was terrific, terrific. And once again, I want to say I'm very appreciative of AEA for being a cooperative partner in our budget process. Organizational meeting. I'm going to need a vote to move the organizational meeting to Monday, April 7th, and the choice is 5:30 p.m. or 6 p.m., depending on the will of the committee. My design for this is the Monday after the election. I've invited the town clerk, Julie Brazil, to come here to do the swearing in of the people who were elected in the April 5th election, so you don't have to go to town hall. We'll celebrate the re-election, hopefully, or election of new friends, and do the organizational meeting, take a group photo, and have some cake to celebrate the new year. I think that this is common in a lot of districts, particularly cities, and I think that having some sort of welcome at the beginning of our officer cycle and the election cycle is really sort of an important thing for us as a committee. So let me do a straw poll. Hands for 5:30, would prefer 5:30.
Can I just,
Sure.
so we have a CIA meeting right now scheduled for the 7th at 3:30. I mean, I don't know if that's gonna stick. We're very forward planning in CIA. We like to put things on the calendar and stake our claim. So would it be possible to do a 5 o'clock, or is that just too early?
I am agnostic on this. It's a matter of when the people would show up. I'm sure that Ms. Brazil would be happy for a 5 meeting.
All I'm thinking is if we do 3:30 to 4:30, 4:45, like, if we're here, it might be nice to just keep on rolling, but I'm also happy to stay.
Do those of us who are not up for reelection need to be here in person for any reason?
For the group,
That is just a time that is virtually impossible for.
So when
to be in
can you
person.
get to? When can you get to us?
I mean, I could do 6 or 6:30, but I also am one, if I don't want to.
Well, we're going to do a group photo
Oh.
at the end of this, so.
Well, then just do it the regular time, 6:30. I think it sounds
Well,
like that's Liz's. We want the whole group here, right? Yes.
I mean, I have months to figure it
If
out.
you can make
I've
6,
just-
we can, that would be helpful. It's only a half-an-hour meeting.
Yeah, but I still have
I
two
understand
children.
it's a matter of keeping 2 children and getting here, yeah.
Yeah.
Bring the kids, it's a party.
Okay. I
So-
can- any of the time, yes, any of that time is fine.
Okay, so Dr. Allison Ampe.
If we're gonna do it, if CIA is keeping their meeting, I'd rather just tag it so we swing
So you can make
into
the
that.
CIA
Because
meeting later.
otherwise, we're gonna be going back and
No,
forth. and that's a
if
pain.
you want to do 5, do 5. It's not, the difference between 5 and 6 for me is not huge, and I have a while to plan.
So,
We have an invite already in our calendar, you know that, right?
Yeah, we have an invite for 5:30 in the calendar right now,
You
which
wanna move
is
it to
sort of a
5. So
placeholder.
you want to move it to 5? You want a motion to move it to 5?
I will accept whatever motion comes from the committee and go with the
Move it to
vote.
5 o'clock. I move it
Second.
to 5 o'clock.
Okay, so we have a motion to hold the organizational meeting on Monday, April 7th at 5 p.m. By Mr. Thielman, second by Dr. Allison Ampe. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That's a unanimous 6-0 vote. Thank you. Superintendent's update.
Okay. I will be quick. Can't see my screen. Okay. So I would like to begin with a call for volunteers. If anyone is still watching at this late hour, we'll also send this out in some of our other avenues. over the next couple of days. But our Arlington MECO program has, for the past 3 years, partnered with the Boston Public Health Commission, Homeless Services Bureau, to provide support, and students and staff have volunteered to clean closets, fold clothing at the shelter. The shelter needs help this weekend. They really, really need more help this weekend, bagging gifts and signing holiday cards for guests. They reached out to Arlington MECO and the APS community to see if we could garner some support and assistance for this. So if you have some availability this coming weekend to do some holiday volunteering, please reach out to Rochelle Smith. Her email is right there on the screen. And we will be sending some flyers out, so watch for that on social media and hit share if you see it. If you are interested in volunteering, they would love to have you help out with this. The pictured there up in the right is last year's volunteer crew, and they did a lot of great work getting some packages and resources ready for families.
Is the location of that at the MECO headquarters or where?
I believe it takes place in Boston, but I'm not 100% sure what the location is, so we'll make sure we get that in whatever materials we share out.
Excellent.
But you can email Rochelle, she will tell you. We have had a lot of winter conferences, or conferences, not conferences. We've had those too, but we've had concerts over the last couple of weeks. The AHS Winter Concert showcased all of our AHS courses and instrumental ensembles. That program included music from lots of genres, as well as 8 different languages sung in the choir concerts, including Filipino and Taiwanese. And the instrumental ensembles featured student conductors. In this work, the students were empowered to stand on the podium and conduct, were taught how to conduct, and decided which piece they wanted to conduct, which is a great example of the ways our teachers are empowering students to take on leadership roles and try on the work of the field. And so there are 3 pictures there of some of the student conductors at our concerts over the last couple of weeks. I want to say a thank you. Our winter sports season is getting underway now, and to close out our cross-country season, Coach Richardson sent out a letter recently after serving AHS cross country for 17 years and leading them to many league championships, saying that he'll be handing it off to spend more time with family to assistant coach Justin Barassa. So I wanted to thank him for that. It's been a long time that he's been working with the AHS cross country team, and we're happy for him and excited for him and sad to see him go. And then, excuse me, I needed to be punny this evening, apparently. I went to Thompson today, and there were a lot of decorated doors, or they were adorned, get it? Sorry. I don't know what kind of mood I was in when I put that on the slide. But students and teachers in every class at Thompson, including in specialist classes, created student-designed winter door decor. Those got judged this week by folks all over the district who came to visit Thompson, and we got a judging sheet, and it was hard because they're all amazing. The criteria required the doors to feature student-created concepts and artwork. The students planned their own doors. They also had funny puns on their doors. And I'm showing Administrative Assistant Vicki Rose's front desk, which included all of the students, by having each of them sign a marshmallow. Every single one of those 550-ish Thompson students had a marshmallow on the front desk of Thompson, which was very cute. And they also tried to incorporate Thompson's values into the process of creating the doors. So it's been a very spirited week or two at our schools, celebrating winter, looking forward to the break, and we hope everybody has a very happy and healthy break, and that our educators take the opportunity to unplug, that our families really enjoy time at home with their families, and if anybody needs support, we of course have lots of supports available that we'll be posting and messaging out to families over the break in case you need it. Grants and approvals are coming to all of you now in the consent agenda, and I just wanted to name that. There were a number of AEF grants, as Mr. Gorski mentioned, that were approved and are getting underway in terms of implementation over the next couple of weeks, as well as other competitive grants for the committee's review and approval, and your enrollments are in your materials. I'm happy to take any questions.
So the vote under the consent agenda is to approve the grants?
Yeah, we put the and if there's a different way folks want to do that, then we can put it in a different place. But for now, we put it under the consent agenda for.
Yeah, it's just make sure that we've got the wording of what we're doing. We're receiving the grants or approving them?
They approve it.
It's typically acceptance.
Okay. I'll make note of that. Any questions under superintendent's update? Dr. Allison Ampe.
Did you want to mention the budget info session? I see it on the,
Oh, yes, sorry, it was a color block. So, yes, on January 21st from 7 to 8 p.m. Here at Arlington High School in the Discourse Lab, we're planning a school committee budgets. The budget subcommittee is planning with me a budget information session for interested community members. We'll have an option to listen in via webinar. It probably won't be an interactive option because managing the hybrid is challenging, but we wanted to make sure people could listen in if they wanted to. And we'll have more information, share that out as soon as we get through the break.
Okay. Any other questions or comments under superintendent's report? Consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the committee so requests, in which event that item will be considered in its normal sequence. Warrant 25146, dated December 19th, 2024, in the amount of $1,060,868.16. Accepting the FY25 competitive grants as of December 18th, 1924, and the draft school committee meeting minutes for the meeting of December 5th, 2024. Motion by Mr. Thielman, second by Dr. Allison Ampe. All in favor?
yes.
Opposed? Unanimous vote. Subcommittee liaison reports. Budget, Dr. Allison Ampe.
We'll be meeting again in January.
Thank you. Community relations, Ms. Exton.
We were contacted by the Arlington Human Rights Commission about an appointment, but Mr. Schlickman and I are working on sorting out who needs to be appointed, how many people the school committee should appoint, and there are some bookkeeping things to take care of. So I will be in touch with my subcommittee once I have sorted that out.
Yeah, there are a couple things that need to be sorted out. The town bylaw states that we have the appointment rights to 5 of the 13 commissioners, and right now we have only appointed 4 of them. So the next person to be appointed will be ours. So that will bring us back up to 5. But the term dates are off, and there's some work we need to do with the clerk and the town manager in order to sort this stuff out first. CIAA, Ms. Morgan.
We met yesterday. We had a really comprehensive presentation about math pathways from grade 6 all the way through AHS. The slides are very detailed and are in Novus, and we are going to meet again in January and talk about the program of studies for AHS and competency determinations.
Thank you. Policies and procedures. Mr. Carden has left. He had a previous engagement. Arlington High School Building Committee, Mr. Thielman.
Doing well. We'll open the building, the third, phase 3 right after February break.
Okay. Liaison reports.
Facilities Subcommittee meets January 8th.
Facilities Subcommittee meets January 8th.
Right.
Okay. Liaison reports. Announcements. Future agenda items. Mr. Spiegel, executive session.
Dr. Alman, do you think we need?
Do we need to do one?
I don't think we have an update.
No, we do not have an update. So the next motion I will entertain is a motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn by Ms.
Second.
Morgan, second by Ms. Exton. With enthusiasm, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By the way, the cupcakes have a white chocolate buttercream frosting.
ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.